Lord of the Mysteries, Cook, Offer Me Gold Pounds and Sweet Iced Tea by author Xiao Wutong Shui Kia Wening. Chapter 51-72. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. And those who want to support me, I have a Patreon channel, get early access to video on Patreon. Chapter 51, Everyone Survived. Hiss, ow, 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 ow. Did I hit my head? It feels like my whole body is aching. Klein could be said to have been woken up by the pain. While tentatively groping for the source of the pain, he blearily opened his eyes, only to be suddenly startled by a curtain of blood before him. What's going on? Klein steadied himself, confirming that the terrifying crimson before his eyes was merely blood trickling down from his forehead. Wiping it away, he was finally able to sit up and carefully observe his surroundings. This wasn't a place he was familiar with, but from the pitch-black inner walls, painted window panes, and the peaceful, quiet atmosphere, it was unmistakably in the style of the Church of the Night. Boom! The terrifying sound of a gas explosion echoed in his mind again as Klein gradually recalled the accident that had occurred at the Blackthorn Security Company. Almost the instant reinforcements arrived, a massive explosion accompanied by a surging heatwave swept through, instantly blowing everyone present away. He seemed to have stabilized himself using the clown's balance, but just as he was about to help a teammate beside him, he was knocked unconscious by falling bricks and tiles that showed no sportsmanship. Looking at it this way, his other injuries were probably caused the same way. Is he now inside some cathedral? Klein felt a brief moment of shame for the reason he bit the dust, then gathered his thoughts and began to seriously assess his situation. His injuries were all superficial, they looked scary, but they were minor issues that could be solved with a single ritual magic spell. He didn't know when he had been moved here, but since no one had attended to him yet, it was likely that others' conditions were more serious, or perhaps it was simply a lack of manpower. Klein, you're awake. Leonard's casual, slightly frivolous voice sounded from the doorway. Klein looked toward the source. His mysterious, poet, colleague was leaning leisurely against the doorframe, looking pristine and brand new from head to toe, completely unharmed. Wait, brand new? Klein suddenly felt an urge to laugh. Is the captain and the others okay? Although Leonard's state was an answer in itself, Klein still checked out of concern. The result was unexpectedly optimistic. Thanks to his timely warning, Dunn had arranged for Luo Yao to send a telegram to the support department as soon as the situation was under control. This had made the members of the Punisher and the Machinery hive mind cautious, allowing them to respond accurately to the reckless team member's mistake. Admittedly, the Beyonders at the center of the explosion had suffered various degrees of injuries and were taken by their respective churches for treatment. At least, the current situation hadn't led to any irreversible consequences as it might have. Everyone survived. Klein let out a deep sigh of relief. But something seemed strange. If they were caught in some conspiracy, what was the mastermind in the shadows plotting? Was it just to eliminate Tingen's official Beyonders through a so-called accident? It's not that this reason doesn't hold up, it's just, it feels a bit thin. How much longer are you going to daze off? Seeing that Klein remained silent, Leonard simply leaned in close and gave a sharp snap of his fingers. It's time for your ritual magic treatment. Mr. Wulian Yassos. At the train station platform, a gentleman stepped slightly to the side, blocking Wulian's view of the steam dragon. Are there going to be more waves after all? Wulian sighed inwardly, looking up at the man whose features, attire, and even hair were perfectly neat. It's me, Clifford B.N.O. The man seemed to follow the approach of being polite before getting tough, removing his glove before extending his right hand to Wulian. I'm a colleague of those people you just encountered at Black Rose. Wulian reached out to shake hands, his eyes shifting slightly downward. As expected, a red glove. The other party seemed intent on leading Wulian away from the crowd, and Wulian was happy to cooperate. The two walked to a secluded spot. Clifford stood still and turned around, looking down at Wulian from a head's height above him. Al Hassan's team fell into a collective dream 2 days ago. Do you know about this? So it's only been 2 days. It feels like so much has happened. Wulian was dazed for a moment but quickly put on a questioning expression. Al Hassan, 2 days ago, you mean those people from Backland? Are they okay? Clifford watched the youth before him. Your Excellency Sisama said that the spirit does not lie, and neither do dreams. Wulian, whom he had pulled into a dream, reacted so realistically, so sincerely. Is he truly unrelated to this? Or is it some kind of tacit understanding among the church's high-level officials? Clifford knew that regardless of whether the results of this private test met his expectations, he should let go. Whether Wulian was innocent, or so troublesome that Clifford was powerless against him. But as long as the latter possibility existed, Wulian was a wandering time bomb. And yet the church's attitude was so lukewarm. Clifford frowned deeply. He suddenly thought of a magazine he had read at some point. There was a sentence in it that he hadn't agreed with at the time. But at this moment, that sentence instead haunted his ears and heart like a maggot on a bone, incredibly noisy. That sentence was, "Better to kill by mistake than to let one go." No. Clifford tried his best to control his thoughts, preventing them from sliding into a more dangerous abyss. As a member of the Nighthawks, as a guardian, he couldn't possibly do something harmful. Even if there were suspicions about Wulian, the most he could do was stay vigilant and react quickly. Acting rashly was undoubtedly the worst choice. He managed to convince himself and gave a forced smile to Wulian, who was waiting patiently. "No, it's nothing." Having thought it through, his attitude was no longer so serious and stiff, and he chatted casually with Wulian. "Are you going to Winter County? Taking this train?" "Yes, it leaves in 3 minutes." Wulian responded good-naturedly. "Then get on the train first." Clifford suddenly remembered something. "By the way, when you went to register, we're done and the others okay?" "Yeah." Wulian didn't know how to respond, so he just gave a hurried reply and boarded the train with his luggage. Phew, why is that gentleman still dwelling on the Backland matter? The passengers on the train had mostly settled in, and Wulian easily found his seat, sitting down primly while holding his small leather suitcase. "After all, you handled it quite sloppily. It would be strange if the authorities cleared you of suspicion immediately." Benefactors Building responded somewhat perfunctorily. "To be safe, I suggest you activate spirit vision to check the situation. Although the target is on those Nighthawks, it's not impossible that you've been involved." Wulian, who had been uneasy all day, nodded at the suggestion and tapped his right temple twice. "Woo-woo-woo, wah." The shrill, piercing cry of a young child sounded in his ear. Wulian's neck was stiff, like a malfunctioning machine with a screen full of static, as he turned his head jerkily to look at the eerie source of the sound on his shoulder. It was a child with skin as deathly white as wall plaster. Rumble. A clap of thunder exploded, and the heavy rain that had been building up for who knows how many days finally poured down, the splashing water enough to soak the knees of pedestrians. People cursed the untimely weather in low voices, hurrying to find buildings to shelter from the wind and rain, a sense of orderly beauty within the chaos. The only anomaly was a gentleman running toward the station against the flow of the crowd. His neat hairstyle and attire were ruined by the heavy rain, and his excessively slippery blood-red gloves had fallen to the ground. Only those brown eyes, burning with fury, shone brightly in the downpour, becoming increasingly violent. Chapter 52, The Storm Has Not Subsided. Huff, huff, ha, ha. Clifford's body swayed slightly from the intensity of his sprint, but he seemed oblivious, continuing his journey with a terrifyingly low pressure emanating from him. He needed an explanation from Wulian Yassos. True, Wulian's performance in the dream had been impeccable, and it seemed that he, having just left Backland, had nothing to do with the members of Midnight Hymn being pulled into the dream. Even if the investigation into him had been interrupted quite abruptly by Crescia Sexissima, the fact that Wulian had no problem appeared to be an indisputable truth. But why was it him again? The one who had just left, only for the members of the Black Rose to be plunged into a crisis immediately after. Why was it Wulian Yassos again? The ill-timed rain came suddenly, too torrential and too relentless, heartlessly hindering Clifford's movements and leaving him in a wretched, soaking state. And now, Clifford hastily wiped the sweat-mixed rainwater from his face. What was this swindler going to do in Winter County? It didn't matter, he would catch up. Clifford comforted himself. He had been promoted to Soul Assurer a month ago, becoming a bona fide mid-sequence Beander. The kind of tragedy from a few years ago would never happen before him again. Wulian forced himself to recover from the stiffness of his skipped heartbeat. When did this brat, could it have been that time he brushed past Jelen? But why are there two? No, now is not the time to think about that. If this thing is the same as the one at the Black Rose. His gaze quickly darted across the interior of the carriage. Gentlemen chatting, couples leaning on each other, doting parents, playful children. This train carried a large number of passengers. For business, for life, or for a livelihood, they were either laughing or quiet, and some leaned on their hands with expressions of distress, but they were all vibrant and alive. He had to think of a way, yes, think of a way. The ordinary people before him showed no signs of abnormality, the poison gas hadn't spread yet, there was still time. Wulian felt the stub of the candle in his pocket, his normally nimble fingers slightly stiff. This time, it won't backfire, right? After neurotically sorting through his thoughts once more, Wulian finally dared to believe that his hasty plan indeed had no obvious loopholes. He lit the candle once again. Wulian's plan was quite simple. Step 1. Use the hallucinogenic candle to create a small-scale dream, allowing the passengers in the nearby carriages and that wraith to be immersed in a business-as-usual scenario. Having prepared in advance, Wulian easily escaped from the dream. He set down the candle, moved with extreme speed through the gaps between the seats, and came to a halt before the carriage door. Step 2. Climb onto the roof and use the headband for a localized teleportation to induce the separation of spirit and flesh debuff. Thanks to the training from his cheap old father and the members of Midnight Hymn, Wulian hadn't just been on the receiving end of beatings, he had also practiced footwork and movement. Although not as good as a clown, with superhuman balance, relying on a few protrusions on the carriage door was enough for him to flip onto the roof, even now, amidst the torrential rain and slippery metal. Fortunately, this isn't a mountainous area. Wulian breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't want to have his head knocked by a tunnel or some other random thing during a tense and exciting, mystical battle. Having completed this step, the passengers in the carriage were basically safe. After all, Wulian had just analyzed this type of little brat. It had low intelligence and would only unconsciously emit poison gas when unstimulated. In an open environment, the threat of this thing had been reduced to a minimum. Wulian injected spirituality into the headband, and his thin figure quickly dissolved, only to reappear even faster. Seeing the little brat stupidly lingering in its original position, or rather, being left behind by the train closer to the rear, Wulian confirmed once again that his previous decision not to teleport rashly was correct. Counting the time, Wulian's field of vision suddenly lifted, the effect of the spirit out of body had arrived. Through the curtain of rain, he watched the expression of Wulian change from hollow to solemn. Seeing that wraith, with its deathly white skin and constant weeping, rushing toward him like a swallow returning to its nest, a meaningful and kindly smile involuntarily appeared on his face. Step 3. Relying on his innate high status, give some uninvited guests a proper reception. A cryptologist, without sufficient preparation indeed has no good way to deal with a wraith, but with his high status spirit, isn't cleaning up such a small fry as easy as pie. Begone, monster. Die. Wulian handled his soaked clothes and cleaned up the water trails left when he boarded the train before returning to his previous seat and dispelling the hallucinogenic effect of the candle. Only 2 minutes had passed. In such a short interval, it was only natural that nothing had happened in the carriage. To Benefactor's building's surprise, Wulian's performance this time was commendable. At least this little guy, who always let his kindness overflow without the ability to follow through, had chosen a relatively correct way to handle things and hadn't gotten himself killed. As for Wulian not being able to help himself after dealing with the uninvited guest and setting off back to Tingen to check the situation, forget it, there was no one in Tingen who could do anything to him anyway. Besides, the youth tilted his head to look at the scenery outside the window. Although there were some plants dotting the view, as they moved into the countryside, the world outside the train still appeared somewhat desolate and monotonous. They were almost out of Tingen. Wulian leaned back against the seat in a comfortable position. He and his son's body were both safe. That was enough. Sir. The train to Winter County departed 12 minutes ago. Facing that police ID with a rank high enough to send his entire family away, the station worker shrank his neck and carefully responded to the other's inquiry. 12 minutes. Clifford's eyes lost focus slightly. Beyonders of the Evernight pathway do not excel in speed. No matter how blinded by rage he was, he knew that Wulian Yassos had successfully left. Go back and report the suspicions regarding Wulian. Perhaps it would be an inquiry from the Holy Cathedral, or an interception by Nighthawks along the way, but that had nothing to do with him. Hey, he seemed to have forgotten. The church knew everything he knew, there was no need for him to remind them at all. Knowing full well that the train Wuliang had taken had already departed, having come in a rage after hearing the news of the accident at the Black Rose, he was merely clinging to a sliver of hope just in case. As it turned out, such a coincidental thing did not happen. The gentleman, who had made a great deal of futile effort in his anger, left somewhat dazed, his back reflecting a lonely hue. Sigh, hadn't he come to the station to find someone under the guise of an inspection? Since things had come to this, he might as well continue with his official duties. Having composed himself, Clifford, about to walk out of the station, suddenly noticed a thin lady in old clothes standing at the porch. She looked somewhat soul-shaken, with no sign of having tidied her appearance. Perhaps due to the weather, she seemed to be shivering with cold, her skin pale to the point of being nearly transparent. "Sir, have you seen a child a little over a year old? He was lost here." The lady almost lunged in front of Clifford. Her voice was hoarse and trembling, sounding like a sob and an entreaty. This was a job for the police, the ordinary kind, who only took on evacuation duties when beyonders needed them. But whether out of pity or a need to escape his wild thoughts through busyness, Clifford decided to listen to the lady's plea. "I haven't seen him, madam. Please calm down and tell me more about your child, his appearance, and the circumstances when he went missing." The rain dripping from the ends of his hair reminded Clifford of his state. While paying attention to the lady's intermittent and unorganized words, he briefly tidied his appearance, which had been ruined by the heavy rain. "My child, obedient, very obedient, my little Jay, fair and clean, not even half as tall as a table. He left with his father. When they left, he was crying and laughing, very happy. No, he seems to be crying again. Ah." Felly was in a trance, as if raving. She seemed very cold, unable to stop herself from pulling at her old clothes, dry clothes. Clifford's movements froze in place. He realized he had made a huge mistake, or rather, he had lost the basic ability to distinguish right from wrong. He must warn. He must compensate. He must make a decision. "I sympathize with your situation, madam," he responded to Felly. "Could you please wait for me? Just for a little while. I'm going to ask the staff. You know, they are the most likely to notice your child's tracks. After that, I will help you look for your little Jay. I am very good at finding people, you can trust me." Felly looked at the man before her in a daze and subconsciously chose to comply. Using a smile, or rather, a Beander ability hidden under a smile, to soothe her again, Clifford strode back to the previous location. Such a high-ranking official. The worker gestured exaggeratedly to his companion. "Just to ask me if a train had departed. I suspect it was the one he was supposed to catch." Catching a glimpse of the high-ranking official, hurriedly entering through the open door out of the corner of his eye, the worker's chattering stopped abruptly, like a duck being grabbed by the throat. Clifford paid no heed to this. He snapped off a blank follow-up form, picked up a nearby pen, and quickly and messily wrote a few lines. Then, his gaze searched around the room until he found a stack of barely waterproof craft paper bags. He labeled the paper bag, 7th Group, Urgent, and handed the simply sealed letter to the talkative worker. "Take this to the nearest police station as quickly as possible, remember, as quickly as possible. If you delay, you will face extremely severe charges." The worker took the letter with a look of despair, wanting to ask something, perhaps a plea, but was thrown a raincoat by Clifford and forced out the door with a gaze so stern it was intimidating. The worker on the other side, who had just wanted to act as if it were none of his business, was immediately locked on by Clifford's equally sharp gaze. "Notify the highest level you can find right now and tell them a heinous fugitive has appeared here and is preparing to operate near the tracks. Stop all departures immediately under some excuse, and any trains passing through must also be intercepted. Someone will contact you soon. Believe me, if the message isn't delivered, you will also face imprisonment." Watching the second messenger stumble away, Clifford looked through the layers of buildings at the barely visible dark spires in the distance and took a deep breath. He took a heavy black umbrella from the corner and put on an extremely gentle smile. "Slight, are you a stupid pig? No, at least a pig wouldn't activate that life-threatening talisman at the wrong time. Do you still think you're a new lad? I'd rather you learn from the newcomers." The scolding he had received not long ago still echoed in his ears. Slight shook his head in annoyance and heavily set down the heavy wine glass in front of him. "We are punishers. We are the executors of the storm's will. Not some impulsive fools who only mess things up. Why don't you look at Oliver next to you? I really want to dig out his brain and put it in your head." He noticed that Jellin hadn't returned for a long time and reminded us to warn the Evernight side. "What did you do? You shamed the entire church. You'd better keep a good eye on this woman for me." "No, together with Oliver." TCH. A hint of contempt escaped the young folk of Rage's nose. "Hey, our experienced Mr. Oliver Lowell." Slight mocked the advanced individual mentioned by the team leader. "Aren't you going to see that bitch? You seem to get along quite well with her." "Enough, Slight." Oliver stopped his companion in a low voice, subconsciously pulling at the headscarf that tightly concealed his blue hair. He tried to talk as calmly as possible to the person who discriminated against his elf blood. "What else can I see? We could have gotten some useful information from her, until you told her that the child was already dead. That disgusting little brat." Slight was overjoyed. "What's the difference between him being alive or dead? Oliver, do you actually feel bad for such a filthy thing?" Or, Oliver didn't want to hear Slate's foul language anymore. This colleague might not be the one who discriminated against his bloodline the most, but he was definitely the most foolish. I'm going to the dungeon to check. He heavily closed the door leading to the underground, leaving that string of ambiguous muttering behind him. To be honest, he was really afraid that Slate's foul mouth would cause consequences even more serious than the prisoner refusing to speak. After all, ever since he mentioned the child's death, the woman named Feli had been acting a bit off. It wasn't until he arrived in front of the cell where Feli was held that Oliver's heart, which had been in his throat, finally died. Stone dead. Exactly like the woman before him. Chapter 53, The clouds part, but the moon is dim. Beneath Street. Selena's church, in a room near Channy's gate. Captain, something happened to Clifford. Accompanied by hurried footsteps, the room's door swung wide open, and the urgent report shattered the original solemnity and silence of the church. Casement stood up abruptly, snatching the already opened paper, marked with several damp stains, from his team member's hand. My state is not right, I can't distinguish between spirits and real people. There is a wraith at the station, appearing as a thin lady searching for a 1.5-year-old child. I am leading her north along the tracks. I've already had someone notify the train station to suspend service, let the police take over quickly. When you encounter me, do not show mercy. It was Clifford's handwriting, scribbled and chaotic, the very style that the usually disciplined man held in the greatest contempt. A wave of immense grief overflowed in an instant, yet it did not cause Casement's voice to falter for even half a second. Edward, perform the ritual to summon Agnes's messenger. Tell her and Siborn to double-check Fugar town for any Beander remnants. Once confirmed, stay vigilant and get to the steam train station as soon as possible. After notifying them, have Walter and Frick prepare the carriage at the door. Come find me at Channy's gate, and don't forget to prepare for battle. Understood. The Red Gloves member named Edward nodded heavily, strode to the adjacent room, and began to construct a wall of spirituality. As Casement was giving instructions, he was already walking out the door. He looked up and met the tired but profound gray eyes of the Tingen Nighthawk's captain. With his enhanced senses, a nightmare naturally wouldn't miss the commotion Edward had just made. The team member is about to lose control. He's at the steam train station, trying to lead a wraith north along the tracks, Casement said succinctly. Done. I need you to report the situation to the Holy Cathedral, send team members to contact the police and control the scene, and make sure to guard Channy's gate. Dunn nodded calmly, waiting for the other man to finish. According to Clifford's description, the wraith is a thin lady searching for a 1.5-year-old child. This matches the image of Jellen's wife. It's best to confirm this with the Punishers. Also, Casement rubbed his temples and forced a rather unsightly smile. I'm taking sealed artifact 30782 and Saint Selena's ashes. Saint Selena's ashes. Dunn repeated the words as if to confirm. Yes. Casement's answer was somewhat strained. Clifford is a newly promoted sole assurer. I must be prepared. If things went south, they had to restrain Clifford and the wraith in the shortest time possible and kill them quickly. Clifford's priority was even higher. Dunn knew this all too well. He didn't delay any further. First, he found Leonard, who was currently in the best state, and gave him a few instructions. Then he went to the room with the backup telegraph machine, completed the report to the Holy Cathedral, confirmed with the Punishers, and performed the preliminary work to collect the sealed artifact. After all this, he arrived at Channy's gate with Casement, took out the mutated sun emblem, and Saint Selena's ashes, and handed them to the hurried Edward and the pensive Casement. May the goddess bless you. He solemnly tapped 4 spots on his chest, drawing a crimson moon. Praise the goddess. Casement nodded in return, holding Saint Selena's ashes in one hand. He gave Dunn a deep look, left a take care, and departed without looking back. Dunn turned around, his gaze lingering on the team members gathered around him for a moment before finally settling on Channy's gate, which had lost its peace and quiet and was now faintly buzzing with unrest. Tingen's long-awaited rainstorm seemed unable to sustain itself, suddenly withdrawing its pouring momentum and only leaving a few scattered wisps of rain, which could be called sensible. The pedestrians seeking shelter finally breathed a sigh of relief, walking out of the porches one after another, scattering into the streets and alleys to embark on their own journeys. Heading north along the tracks, a black umbrella advanced at a steady pace through the silent stillness. The umbrella's surface was somewhat old but had been washed clean by the heavy rain. The water droplets clinging to it were fine and crystal clear, only occasionally disturbed by a stray wisp of rain, at which point they would entwine and fall, merging into the road surface mixed with gravel and dust. The clouds, deep and heavy like an iron curtain, had long since dissipated. Some sunlight was impatiently driving straight down, seemingly intent on sweeping away even the last of the haze and dampness. Even though it was nearing evening, the sky showed a commendable clarity, reflecting bright images in the puddles, a scenery that complemented itself perfectly. Logically, in such good weather, an umbrella shouldn't be needed. But that no longer tidy, soul assurer, seemed unlikely to ever walk out of this downpour again. Clifford held the umbrella, tilting it gentlemanly toward the lady beside him. His gaze followed, and in a daze, he felt that the sorrowful mother was a living human being. It wasn't until his forearm holding the umbrella sank into her shoulder as he walked that he struggled to wake up from the bone-chilling cold. When did it start? His thoughts wandered. Was it because of that tragedy years ago that began with laziness and ended with flesh and blood? Since that day, he hadn't enjoyed a single night's peaceful sleep. Was it because of the constant travel and repeated crises since joining the Red Gloves? As a team member, he was supposed to just follow orders, but he couldn't help but overthink, to the point of being jumpy at every rustle in the grass. Was it because he had recently consumed a potion? Was it because of the drastic ups and downs in his mood? Or was it because— No, don't think about it anymore. He had to hold on. At least wait until the captain and the others arrived. Clifford only felt his head was extremely groggy, accompanied by an endless, needle-like pain, like the aftereffects of overusing Beyonder abilities, but much more severe. In such a state, there was no way he could deal with a wraith. He couldn't even be sure if it was a wraith or an evil spirit. The gentleman's footsteps were erratic and hurried as he moved away from civilization. Out of a sense of responsibility to protect the people. Or, based on a living creature's instinct for survival. Wulian just wanted to curse right now. Was the Jellin family some kind of wraith wholesale outlet? Sourcing directly from the manufacturer with a clear conscience. A clearance sale at wholesale prices, is that it? Why is there another one? After a moment of silent frenzy, Wulian suddenly felt a strange sense of relief. At least they were only facing a wraith, weren't they? Without a physical body, it meant it couldn't be a vessel for some evil thing to descend upon the world. Wulian tried his best to console himself, like the witty remarks he used to comfort himself in times of hardship. But that didn't change the fact that he was powerless at this moment. Yes, before him was a wraith and a Beyonder whose state was quite unstable. Now, as a greater ghost, he could completely use methods like Wraith Screech to deal with Feli. He had successfully practiced it before, so it wasn't a difficult task. Very simple. As long as he didn't care about Clifford's state. Wulian's gaze pierced through the dark surface of the umbrella, silently watching the rather disheveled gentleman. Clifford's gloves were all lost, and his hair and clothes were soaked with rain, with trickles still dripping down even now. His neatly trimmed brown hair was plastered dejectedly against his scalp, with a faint tendency to turn black and lengthen. And beneath the long trench coat that tightly enveloped him, thick, vein-like things were writhing irregularly on the man's back, as if they might burst out at any moment. The utterly destitute Nighthawk had lost his sharp perception, turning his head in a daze to look at Feli, his nearly hollow brown eyes filled with a strange obsession. Perhaps for Clifford, keeping an eye on this wraith was the only reason he hadn't completely lost control. Wulian sincerely hoped this gentleman could hold on until the moment he was rescued. Even if the hope was slim. Chapter 54, Missed Call. When Casement and the others arrived, Clifford had already walked Feli out of the range where they could act. Hidden beneath the black umbrella, the man's steps were unsteady, constantly finding a weak balance in his stumbles, clumsy like a child learning to walk. His deepening brown eyes seemed to possess a separate consciousness, fixedly turned toward the spirit beside him, bearing a deathly stillness. His posture was wretched, his expression was distorted, but ultimately, he still resembled a person. Captain. Edward's gaze reluctantly left his collapsing comrade and turned toward Casement, carrying a measure of cautious hope. Clifford, is he? He might still be saved. Casement's deep eyes gazed intently at Clifford 100 meters away, his reply suppressing an almost imperceptible joy. Don't get careless. This Red Gloves captain noticed the delicate situation on site. Clifford's condition is poor. We must quickly set up a ritual magic to stabilize him. Next, I will handle controlling Clifford. You all go kill that wraith, Edward. Try to bring 30782 close to the target, and be sure to maintain vigilance. Yes. Edward tightened his grip on the sealed artifact. Walter, watch out for alerts, and be ready to support Edward at any time. Frick, you prepare the preliminary work required for the ritual magic, and try to take over Clifford as soon as the wraith disappears, and of course, don't relax your exploration of the surroundings. Understood. Got it, Captain. The capable lady with black hair and blue eyes and the refined gentleman with red hair and green eyes responded simultaneously. Who? Casement exhaled a breath of stale air, a slightly unpracticed gesture. Relax, we will bring Clifford back with us. He muttered softly to himself, forcing a gentle smile. Dash 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 dash. Wu Lian quietly listened to Caseman's arrangements. It was rational, practical, and well organized. It sounded perfectly fine. Hopefully, the ritual magic would take effect in time. He sighed softly, returning his attention to Feli nearby. His gaze suddenly froze. My child is gone. The woman paused and murmured, her spirit body flickering for an instant without warning. My little Jay was right here, again. The wraith babbled, neither smiling nor crying, appearing terrifyingly deranged. Wu Lian pursed his lips. This was exactly where he had dispersed the second wraith. Was he again? No, the hidden danger at that time had to be eliminated, and the current situation was not his responsibility. Instead of dwelling on this, his gaze fell upon Clifford, whose movements had slowed and frozen. The captain had made his move. Wu Lian mentally rehearsed the subsequent developments. I wish them success. Otherwise, he should prepare to step in. Dash 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 dash. Mr. Moretti, we can handle things here. Amidst the shouts of station staff and the clamor of stranded passengers, the yells of passing police officers and the noise of train whistles, a tall, thin inspector with dark hair streaked with white walked solemnly up to Klein, keeping his voice low. Over there, do they need our assistance? No, the police officers are already handling the evacuation there. Thank you very much for your support, Mr. Gleet. Klein took off his top hat and bowed. Then I shall be heading back. All right, be careful on your way, I'll have an officer escort you back. Gleet didn't linger. He pulled a nearby officer over, gave a couple of instructions, and strode toward the bustling crowd. Inspector Moretti. The officer saluted somewhat stiffly and pointed to a smaller carriage parked not far away. Please get in. All right. Klein felt a subtle anxiety churning inside but couldn't show it in front of the officer, so he feigned composure, nodded, and quickly boarded the four-wheeled, single-horse carriage. Was it perhaps because he was the last to join the Nighthawks team and had the least information regarding sealed artifacts? Or was it that his Beander ability was not well suited to dealing with the various abnormal disturbances behind the Chinese gate? In any case, Leonard relayed the captain's arrangement, assigning Klein to coordinate with the police. With the involvement of the police, the combined approach of manually stopping trains at the station platform and sending telegrams proved gratifyingly efficient, allowing him to pull away and see if he could assist his comrades. Taking a deep breath, Klein forced himself to close his eyes and rest, recalling the knowledge and information he had previously encountered regarding the Chinese gate or sealed artifacts. Even a small bit of help would be worthwhile. Suddenly, he opened his eyes in surprise. Layered, illusory whispers filled his ears. Without warning or basis, accompanied by a sharp pain deep in his brain, it felt like someone was praying to Mr. the Fool using the three-part honorific name. Could something have gone wrong with Miss Justice? No, she had just taken a leave of absence 2 days ago and should be under the care of her family and bodyguards. Mr. Hanged Man had also conveyed a request to postpone the gathering, and he wasn't the type to rashly chant the honorific name of a great existence. Perhaps it was Student Sun. But he had been living quite peacefully recently. After running through all three of his cultists, Klein still couldn't figure out who was disturbing him at such a critical moment. And his own honorific name didn't seem to have any other channels for leakage. Wait. Klein suddenly remembered something and nearly jumped up due to his overreaction. The anonymous account he opened at the Backland Bank. Calm down, calm down. Klein painfully suppressed the urge to tell the carriage driver to stop. Not now, it shouldn't be now. He had to return to the cathedral first to confirm his teammate's status. He couldn't lose sight of the bigger picture, he couldn't lose perspective, he couldn't afford to ignore his 342 gold pounds. Klein's heart was screaming, bleeding, and weeping, but on the surface, he merely frowned and pulled back the curtain on the window to observe the progress of the journey. Strange, are there such desolate sections in Tingen City? Why are there wild trees and weeds everywhere, and gravel and railroad ties? Gravel, railroad ties. The belated spiritual warning, coupled with a massive sense of absurdity, swept over him like a tide. Klein couldn't worry about much else. Flashing open the door, leaping out of the carriage, and pulling the bewildered police officer with him took only an instant. Before Klein could even land, the overly quiet train screeched as it bit into the rails and rolled over the ties, coincidentally smashing the carriage that had strayed onto the tracks. Accompanied by the terrified neighing of the creature, this solidly built, heavy carriage completely crushed the ground right next to Klein. Dust flew up. Chapter 55, Choices. Wu Lian closed his eyes in a not-so-peaceful manner, thinking to himself that this was the perfect moment for a gloomy line like, "Mom, I'm not coming home for dinner." The situation was developing quite rapidly. The wraith, Feli, had gone berserk under the dual stimulation of her disappearing child and approaching danger. Clifford, whose state had been forcibly stabilized by Casement, was also rapidly showing signs of losing control under the influence of this wraith. Seeing that things were going south, Casement was already prepared to use the saint's ashes, even lifting the lid of the urn by a tiny crack. It was at this moment that some meddling fellow stole the Beander characteristic from within Clifford's body. Originally, Wulian had intended to merely steal the state of losing control itself. This shouldn't have been difficult, as Xiao Ke had once used the sequence 6 level fire glove to steal the contamination of the all-black eye. Since contamination and the state of losing control were both conceptual things, perhaps the parasite Beander characteristic he was using could also be effective. Unfortunately, that was not the case. It made sense, though. A Prometheus could steal the Beander abilities of others, and stolen contamination was likewise regarded as a type of Beander ability. In contrast, Clifford's state of losing control was more like a rejection reaction brought about by the Beander characteristic, without the influence of external contamination. At his current stage, Wulian naturally had no way to deal with it. Unless, as he did now, it was uprooted entirely. Since he had already exposed his existence, Wulian, following the simple philosophy of, since I'm already here, seamlessly moved on to deal with Feli. Clifford, having suddenly lost his Beander characteristic, was even weaker than an ordinary person. Wulian naturally had to stabilize the situation, or at least buy some time for the other, Red Gloves, to react. But, why, while he was as busy as a spinning top, did a hand pop up beside him trying to clip a monocle onto him? Wulian used a reaction speed unprecedented even in his past life to duck and dive, darting far away with a whoosh. Only then did he turn his head back, still in shock, staring tearfully at that worm of time, which had a playful smile and was beginning to take human shape. Yes, from their previous contact, it was clear that it would be quite troublesome for Adam and Eamon to make a move on him. But God knows what kind of horror story would happen if that lens was clipped to his spirit body. Once a mysticism connection was established, it wouldn't be impossible for it to open the floodgates for Amon's invasion. Okay. I'm just asking, can he run away? Amen. Wulian could have guessed that Eamon would tamper with things after their last contact. Really, he never overestimated this angel's moral standards, if he even had any. But could someone please tell him why, in a sequence 4 Beander characteristic that was witnessed by Adam as, containing no Eamon, Amon's figure would appear? Wow, a binding contract that bound 0 people. Wulian's lips twitched weakly. Clearly, the Beander characteristic that was Eamon free had 100% Eamon content. What an honest merchant with such large and filling portions. Without sparing another glance at those present, Wulian didn't hesitate for a second, turning to flee into the broader and more chaotic spirit world. This seemed like a decisive and wise choice, except the inexperienced spirit body seemed to have left a tail in its haste. Whether it was the residual traces or his own unerased traits, they were all grandly welcoming the arrival of the hunter. A clumsy countermeasure. The Eamon avatar's smile deepened, yet he still stepped forward leisurely to follow, knowingly taking the bait. Paw. Klein tried his best to ignore the lingering taste of sand in his mouth as he quickly stood up and scanned his surroundings. The policeman who had brought him here in a daze was now slumped unconscious beside him, just a hair's breadth away from being crushed by the carriage and becoming the accident himself. Calculating the time, they had already traveled some distance north of the platform, getting closer to the other battlefield that Leonard had warned him to stay away from. Even someone as clumsy as the curly-haired baboon in Benson's mouth should clearly realize one thing by now: the policeman's abnormality was inextricably linked to those people in the north. Klein subconsciously glanced at the police's four-wheeled carriage. The body was heavy and could probably still be used, but the horses collapsed in front of the carriage were exhaling more than they were inhaling. Should he drive the policeman back to the station? Or check on the situation of the Red Gloves? The fight between the two sides was intense enough to affect someone several kilometers away. It didn't look like their own people had the upper hand. Klein only hesitated for a moment before making a decision. He untied the yellow crystal pendant wrapped in a silver chain from his wrist. Fortunately, it hadn't been knocked or damaged. A new police inspector who cannot divine good or bad luck is not a good clown. I should continue north. I should continue north. I should continue north. He repeated this 7 times. The yellow crystal pendant hesitated slightly before beginning to rotate clockwise in small circles. Should he go above the gray fog to confirm? Klein was a bit hesitant. He hadn't forgotten that red chimney, where the occupants had already fled. Divination below the gray fog might not be reliable. Inspector, What happened? Where are we? Coincidentally, that policeman woke up at that very moment. North of the station, you drove the carriage here. Do you still have any impression of it? Klein was forced to give up his plan of walking 4 steps backwards, facing one of the victims before him with a serious and solemn expression. Me. The policeman was speechless, then became somewhat dazed. I'm not sure. I only felt like my mother seemed to be calling me over there. He raised his hand and pointed further north. Mother. There was only a wraith and a potentially out of control soul assurer there. How could mother be involved? Klein gritted his teeth inwardly. He was inclined to run, but he feared that his report, made without knowing the full situation, would only leave the reinforcements with no way to start. Moreover, since that so-called mother could affect the policeman beside him, the consequences for ordinary people if left alone were completely unpredictable. Which deity do you believe in? Klein confirmed with the policeman, feeling relieved to receive the answer, Evernight Goddess. Everything you see next must be kept secret. After this is over, please contact Inspector Glit to sign a confidentiality agreement. He will understand what happened. Klein stared at the policeman with a heavy gaze until he nodded in confusion, then pulled out various jars and bottles from his trench coat pockets to begin constructing a wall of spirituality and preparing the corresponding ritual magic. Praying for the goddess to grant protection to the policeman caught up in the incident, instructing the policeman to return to the team to alert the inspector in charge, and summoning Ms. Daly's messenger to report the basic situation to the church's higher-ups. After these tasks were completed, Klein thought for a moment before taking out the copper whistle and sending a short message via the white bone messenger. Another coincidence has appeared north along the railway from Tingen Station. A wraith and a potentially out of control soul assurer, despite being restrained by the red gloves, are still affecting ordinary people several kilometers away, making them feel the call of the mother. Too many abnormalities have occurred this afternoon. The mastermind is likely about to appear. Having finished everything he should do, Klein made a final check of the talismans, copper whistle, and the revolver under his arm, then strode toward the north. Extra 4. When the Honest Hall group started farming. Lord of the Mysteries * Stardew Valley. Warning. Potential setting errors, OOC, illogical plot, and diary-like pacing. We're in Pelican Town. Where is Pelican Town? How did we get here? Audrey, Leonard, and Klein exchanged glances, completely at a loss for the answer. Just moments ago, they were brought to this desolate farm by a gentleman calling himself Mayor Lewis and a carpenter named Robin. The backstory seemed to be, the three of them, unable to bear the heavy workload of the city, chose to return to the pastoral life of their elders. Huh, is that a joke? Didn't they just retreat from the bronze door of the Honest Hall and discuss matters within Mr. the Fool's divine kingdom? How did they step out of the gray fog only to find themselves inside a massive, strangely shaped, horseless carriage? Could this be the Transmigration mentioned by Russell Gustav? Leonard poked the dialogue box that had appeared out of thin air on his chest, feeling quite helpless about the glaring words, Leonard Mitchell, written upon it. This clearly didn't seem like a proper world. My sequence ability seems to have reverted to the level of psychiatrist. Audrey keenly observed this. Moreover, Lie is gone. No, rather, the opal necklace it had transformed into was still there, but it was just an ordinary piece of jewelry, completely lacking in Beander characteristics. Audrey, whose true name had been exposed by the dialogue box, was quite distressed. After returning, she absolutely had to ask Mr. the Fool to witness Mr. Star's vow of secrecy again. She definitely didn't want Mr. World's fate to repeat itself on her. Klein was perhaps the one among the three who understood the situation best. The road sign he saw upon arrival, the name, Pelican Town, and the two natives who clearly served as the introductory guide for a management simulation game. Could this world that had inexplicably dragged the three of them over be Stardew Valley, that popular indie game from his previous life? When surfing the internet, he occasionally saw videos of people shouting, "Fellow villager," while farming and mining, sometimes even accompanied by a CCTV-style, rural revitalization, channel. Perhaps when he was alone, he could try communicating with the gray fog. If successful, it would at least provide some security for himself and his companions. Looking up, he found Leonard and Audrey both staring at him. Klein used his clown ability to check his appearance. I also remain at sequence 7, the magician level. He currently wore the appearance of Klein Moretti. Forget it, forget it. Leonard had already stripped the identity he had desperately tried to conceal. As Klein thought of this, he should have been furious, but instead found a trace of amusement amidst the absurdity. I am currently a nightmare. Leonard intended to check on the old man inside him, but the fact that the other party hadn't spoken despite such a major change was an answer in itself. After briefly confirming their respective situations, the trio temporarily shelved the question of where we came from, and began studying the age-old problem of where we are going. This seems to be a completely unfamiliar world, Audrey said softly. How should we get back? Her parents, elder brother, Susie, Xiao, and Furs, and many, many others, these were all existences she could not bear to part with. Another adventure. Leonard chuckled softly, though without any hint of self-satisfaction, merely turning his head to look at Klein. I think this is your specialty. Logically speaking, the seer pathway possesses the most knowledge of mysticism and the strongest spiritual intuition among the three, making him indeed the best candidate for finding a way out. But, transmigrating to another world hardly seems logical, does it? Klein silently complained internally, not daring to relax just because he was in a casual game. This qualified seer took out the notebook and fountain pen he carried, scribbled a bit, and then closed his eyes, as if resting. A simple dream divination, seeking revelation on how to leave this place. He saw a brilliant golden staff with a purple crystal ball embedded in the top, followed by a shadow as deep as ink. What was that? Klein vaguely saw something resembling facial features above the shadow. A dark green, damp sewer, several exhibition halls, and bushes connected by footprints on the snow. Snow. That was an important seasonal marker. Ending the divination, Klein glanced at the farm's appearance: jagged rocks, scattered broken wood, and wildly overgrown weeds. This was probably not what winter looked like. We need to find a staff. He fully disclosed the information obtained from the divination. Perhaps we will be staying here for a long time. Year 1, Spring 1. Strange. My physical strength shouldn't be this weak. Leonard leaned panting on the hoe in his hand. Klein, what is this red, shaking vertical bar? He pointed casually, but his body seemed to receive a command, swinging the hoe in a wide circle before smashing it into the ground, creating a small, light brown pit. Leonard was completely exhausted and collapsed onto the ground with a "Paji." The remaining two watched him perform a sudden disappearance, dumbfounded. Mr. Star, this is unscientific. No, nor is it mysticism. Year 1, Spring 13. The Egg Festival. Oh right, people in this world must believe in Jesus. Klein bent down and smiled as he greeted a little girl passing by, then turned around and muttered quietly, "Don't let Eamon pop up again, not even his brother." Klein, are you going to participate? Leonard looked at the group of miners plus Abigail gathered together. It looks simple, just finding eggs. Audrey, who had just finished socializing, also approached with some excitement. She had happened to find a light dress while tilling the soil. Participating doesn't sound bad. We can also buy some things at the stalls afterward. Who would have thought these gentlemen and ladies were still quite childlike? Well, it wasn't without precedent. Klein recalled the farce at the Honest Hall and agreed, treating it as a way to humor children. 2,000 years later. Klein, are you capable? What decent person uses the staff divination method to find eggs? Leonard accused his old friend with a look of complaint, completely omitting the fact that he tried to hypnotize everyone using poetry at the start of the game. You have the nerve to lecture me. Klein was stunned into laughter by this unreasonable fellow. Ah, the danger of fear, the hope of crimson. When are you going to expand your poetry repertoire? At least don't flaunt it so openly in front of me. Besides, losing to children is embarrassing. All right. It didn't work again. Leonard's voice was tinged with grief and indignation. Divination works, mind reading works, but dream entering just won't. Serves you right. Klein, you. With the two gentlemen exchanging sarcastic remarks beside her, Audrey blinked her azure eyes, turned aside, covered her mouth, and smiled without speaking. Mr. World has such a lively side too. However, you won't be able to beat a gaming expert this way. She turned her head to look at the crowd. Mayor Lewis was presenting the award to Abigail. 1,000 gold coins. In this world, that seems to be a considerable fortune. After all, the money they had was all turned into seeds, busy sprouting. Audrey smiled and clapped for Abigail, preparing to check out what Pierre's stall had to offer later, when suddenly everything went dark. It was a blackout in the physical sense. Subsequently, the three miraculously appeared under the warm white lights of the farm. It's already 10 o'clock at night. Klein suppressed the strong urge to complain and seriously began to analyze. It seems that after completing the main activity of a festival in this world, it automatically jumps to night. Is this why Mayor Lewis repeatedly confirmed our participation in the game? Then this world is quite considerate. At least it didn't make us run back in the dark, Leonard remarked coolly, even though as a nightmare, he didn't care about such things. Well then, Mr. World, Mr. Star, good night. Audrey lifted her skirt and curtsied, receiving immediate responses from the two gentlemen. Year 1, Spring 23. As soon as Audrey stepped out, she found Marnie, whom she had met a few times before, waiting by the door. Beside her was a well-behaved golden retriever puppy sitting obediently. Oh, the poor little thing. It seems to be homeless. The lady looked at the puppy with pity, her loosely hanging braids added a touch of maternal radiance to her. It seems to really like you, Audrey, do you want to adopt it? This puppy looks like Susie. Audrey bent down, reaching out to tease the puppy in front of her as she did with Susie when she was young, but she barely managed to suppress this irresponsible thought. Madame Marnie, if I refuse to adopt it, what will happen to it? Don't you like it very much? Marnie looked surprised. If you refuse, I'll take it back to my ranch, but it certainly won't be as comfortable there as it is with you. The noble young lady pursed her lips, then quickly broke into a relieved smile. Please take it, madam. If you accept, I might come to visit it later. Mr. World, Mr. Star, and I are all working towards the goal of going home. Audrey, you cannot be selfish. Susie is still waiting for you to return, and it would be irresponsible to this little one too. She silently cheered herself on in her heart, finally watching Marnie and little Chick Feather leave the farm with a nearly perfect smile. If the two gentlemen don't mind, perhaps she could work a little overtime to earn some snack money for this little fellow. Audrey, you can do it. Year 1, Summer 1. Klein, save me. Klein tossed and turned uneasily in bed. Why am I still dreaming of that Leonard fellow? I see him every day, it's nothing special. Half asleep, Leonard's slightly aggrieved shout came again. Klein, are you awake? I'm blocked at the doorstep. Save me. Klein jolted upright, realizing he had just been pulled into a dream by Leonard. Before, I could stay conscious in dreams. Now that I'm in a different place, it seems I don't have that privilege. He rubbed his slightly throbbing temples, preparing to go see what was up with his trapped poet classmate. In this world, they didn't need food or drink, and their residences were arranged from the start. A main house for Miss Justice, and the two remaining small houses, along with the main house, formed a distant, peon character arrangement. All in all, it could be considered a benefit of room and board. As for Leonard calling him in a dream, perhaps it was for immediate results. He still showed some courtesy, not disturbing the lady's sweet dreams too early. Get up. Go out. His steps were tripped by a half-meter-tall weed. Klein had experienced setbacks before, but he still stubbornly kicked at the seemingly sparse grass leaves. As sturdy as reinforced concrete. The other exits were blocked by wooden stakes and gravel, all useless junk that wouldn't budge with a kick. Plus an air wall with no scientific basis. Great, there's no way out without tools. As for tools, didn't bring any. Klein, with a desperate expression, stared wide-eyed at his eagerly awaiting former colleague. Miss Justice, wake up quickly. You are the future of the entire farm. Help. Year 2, Autumn 7. With a creak, the long rusted sewer gate finally opened. The incoming steam carried a pungent sour smell. As the mist gradually dispersed, a pool of glowing green unknown liquid was revealed. No way, nuclear wastewater. Klein's expression remained unchanged, but in his heart, a group of fish with chicken legs and six-eyed toads scurried by. With such bizarre previous pearls as precedents, when he actually saw the black sweet potato with 5 facial features, Klein no longer found its appearance too difficult to accept. Hello. I'm just a merchant. You won't hurt me, right? The shadow creature, who called himself Korobus, was timid, helpless, but very polite. Seeing the other party's good attitude, Klein exchanged glances with Audrey, who was secretly observing behind him, then turned to comfort the somewhat uneasy small merchant. The initial good impression stopped the moment it revealed its price list. Return staff, 2 million. Klein's throat tightened, almost unable to stop his voice from cracking. Is the head of this staff made of gold, or is the handle made of gold? So, pen, sieve. This price. I can only ask Dad, cough cough. No, this is a different currency system. We only have a little over 100,000 in savings now. I wonder how long we'll have to work to go home. At least we have a clear goal. Audrey rarely felt such financial embarrassment. Can it be cheaper? Student Leonard stepped forward, throwing a brave direct question. No. Korobus was unexpectedly principled in some aspects. This is a magical product that only I can obtain. All right, it seems there's no room for bargaining. Leonard shrugged ungracefully. So, can 3 people use it together? Or do we have to buy 3? Klein got the answer he least wanted to hear. His eyes were vacant, his mouth slightly agape, and his spirit body, along with 6 million, drifted beyond the astral world. 6 million, just kill him. Year 4, Autumn 6. Finally, we have enough money. By now, Klein no longer felt much joy, only the day in, day out fatigue named 627. This was even more exploitative than his previous lives, 996, and 007. Thinking about the series of messes he'd face upon returning to the Lord of the Mysteries world, leveling up, fighting monsters, dealing with all sorts of crazy old schemers. Klein felt his future was bleak. At this moment, he was sprawled lazily on the sofa, much like a certain famous Xiao from his original world. Perhaps due to gravity, his body seemed to flow little by little towards the ground, but he had no intention of moving or struggling. Just let him rest a bit longer. That being said, Klein was still seizing this last bit of isolation, time to consider the arrangements after his return. Other things aside, at least now he could safely think about Adam's matters, couldn't he? Klein, are you ready? Leonard leaned against the door, casually tapping the door panel with his knuckles. Miss Justice and I are ready. Coming. Klein rubbed his cheeks, let out a long breath, and walked out the door in a few steps. Perhaps feeling a bit weary, he glanced at the dashing and flashy Leonard, then at the bright and captivating, noble Audrey, feeling a strange sense of unreality. Let's go. Klein took one last look at the farm they had cultivated for so long, and raised his staff high. August 15, 2018. Zhou Mingrui opened his eyes, unaccustomed to the blur before him, and instinctively reached for the glasses on his bedside table. I'm home, he whispered in disbelief. Zhou Mingrui got up in a daze, sitting on the bed for a long while. After a long time, he picked up his phone and looked at the perfectly normal date. He really was home. As he got out of bed, he was poked by something metallic. Lifting the quilt, he saw a brilliant golden staff with a purple crystal ball embedded in its tip. It was a return staff. If the effect of this staff was to send people to another world, would using it again send him back to that terrifying world filled with strangeness and madness? Zhou Mingrui pushed the staff away as if it were a hot potato. He wanted to destroy the cursed thing, but hesitated because of the people he had already formed connections with. Why didn't they give me an instruction manual? He smiled, then habitually straightened the corners of his mouth. Washing up, changing clothes, awkwardly asking his manager for leave, and receiving the friendly greeting of, "You're on holiday, why aren't you going back to your hometown for Mid-Autumn Festival, what are you doing going crazy here first thing in the morning?" He bought a train ticket back to his hometown online, didn't pack much, and took a taxi directly to the station. While waiting for the train, Zhou Mingrui habitually bought a cup of iced Americano. But he hadn't maintained his habit of enduring bitterness lately, and the sour bitterness made him grimace inwardly, so he hastily bought a bottle of cola to wash away the taste. Go home. See mom and dad. Just one meeting, just one. After that, we'll see. Wu Lian's figure appeared silently, sneaking into Zhou Mingrui's bedroom with a guilty conscience. Picking up the damned return staff, he pouted and shouted, "Lalala energy," shattering it into several pieces. Return staff. Whatever with the apocalypse, outer deities, Sephiroth, and Beander characteristics, let them do whatever they want. Even if Alyosha, Ammonizes, and Huangdao all came together, Zhou Mingrui still has to stay home with me. It's a big holiday, and since I'm here, he's just a kid, it's not easy for anyone. Wu Lian mumbled as he carried the freshly made trash out of the somewhat dilapidated residential building. He looked up at the sky, squinted slightly, and pulled a somewhat provocative smile. Anyway, it's just an extra chapter. Chapter 56, Buried by Dust. File number, AHW, TG134909130. Confidentiality level, Pope, Archbishop, and Senior Deacon. Overview, guided by the sealed artifact, 008, and former Archbishop in Zhangwil, Ting'an City experienced a series of Beander incidents. On September 13, a fugitive appeared in Fugar town, an explosion occurred at the Blackthorn Security Company, a member of the Red Gloves was on the verge of losing control, and a wraith with mother characteristics appeared. Following these consecutive anomalies, Kaisman Bray, captain of the 7th Squad of the Red Gloves, was forced to invoke the ashes of Saint Selena, which, by coincidence, were obtained by Ince Zhangwil. Subsequent attempts to capture Ince Zhangwil failed due to the interference of 008. Following this series of events, the Ting'an City Nighthawks squad suffered 1 death and 6 injuries. The 7th Squad of the Red Gloves had 5 members seriously injured, and member Clifford Biano completely lost his Beander abilities. Ince Zhangwil obtained the ashes of Saint Selena and fled again with the sealed artifact, 008. Event summary. On September 12, 1349, Klein Moretti, a member of the Ting'an City Nighthawks, noticed something unusual while passing by the Winter Casino on Willer Street and reported it to the church in a timely manner. Since this location is in the northern district of Tingen, which is under the jurisdiction of the church, the Tingen City Nighthawks squad was ordered to take over the matter. Upon investigation, the person in charge of the casino, Huftzimmer, was indeed a low-sequence Beander. That night, he launched an attack before the nightmare Dunsmith could enter his dream, and was eventually killed by the joint efforts of 4 Nighthawks. At Huft's residence, the Nighthawks found records of a ritual he had incited Jellan Scar to perform to create a lucky spirit, basically confirming that Jellan's son had already been murdered. Considering that both Jellan and his wife were believers of the Lord of Storms, the matter was handed over to the Tingen City Punisher Squad. At 9:10 a.m. on the 13th, the bishop of the St. Sophia Church in Fugar Town reported that a townsman who believed in the goddess had gone missing after his routine work last night, and his body parts were discovered earlier today, with traces of burning and corrosion on every piece of flesh. This characteristic matches the modus operandi of the fugitive Devon Emma. Given that Devon is already a sequence 7 inches serial killer, and may possess a highly aggressive Beander item, the entire 7th squad of the Red Gloves set off for Fugar Town. At 12:50 p.m., Dunn Smith, captain of the Tingen City Nighthawks, received a call from the Punisher, learning that Jellan had not returned to his residence and might have sensed something amiss. At the same time, team member Klein Moretti also reported receiving a spiritual warning during divination. Out of caution, the Blackthorn Security Company evacuated all non-combat personnel, informed the 7th Squad of the Red Gloves, stranded in Fugar Town, and contacted the police to carry out the evacuation of personnel in the surrounding blocks. At 1:40 p.m., Jellan Scar arrived at the Blackthorn Security Company, requesting a commission to expel the strangers outside his residence, and gradually began to show signs of alienation. According to the spirit vision of the Nighthawk squad members, the wraith he was carrying looked like a 1-year-old child, with dead white skin, shrill laughter, and corrosive drool. After subsequent dream testing and reminders from team members, Dunsmith led the squad to successfully kill Jellan and disperse the wraith. Almost at the same time, support from the Punisher arrived. One of the members accidentally activated a lightning talisman, and the resulting toxic gas explosion destroyed most of the ground floor area of the Blackthorn Security Company, leaving nearly half of the Tingen City Nighthawks squad seriously injured. Later, church clergy, together with other personnel from the Steam and Machinery Church, transferred and treated the Nighthawks squad members, and the 7th Squad of the Red Gloves, except for those handling the aftermath and inspection, returned to the church to wait for orders. At 3:10 p.m., Caseman Bray received a message from member Clifford BNO forwarded by the police station, learning that he was on the verge of losing control and was containing a female-shaped wraith, suspected to be Jellan's wife, Felly Scar, north of the train platform. In order to suppress Clifford, who might lose control, as soon as possible, Caseman Bray took the sealed artifact, 30782, and the ashes of St. Selena, and set off for the scene with team members Edward Hayes, Walter Ashton, and Frick Brick. The Tingen City Nighthawks squad, except for Klein Moretti who was contacting the police, were all responsible for suppressing the riot of sealed artifacts behind the Chinese gate. At 3:35 p.m., the members of the 7th Squad of the Red Gloves arrived at the area where Clifford was. At that time, Clifford was not yet in a state of losing control, and the condition of the wraith was relatively stable, so Caseman took relatively prudent measures. He personally controlled Clifford. Edward and Walter used the assistance of 30782 to deal with the wraith together, and Frick prepared the ritual magic. At this time, the aggressiveness of the wraith, Felly, suddenly increased, and Clifford accelerated toward a state of losing control. However, for unknown reasons, the wraith, Felly, soon appeared to be under attack, and Clifford's Beander characteristic was also transferred out of his body, interrupting the process of losing control. Caseman withdrew in time, took the mentally exhausted Clifford away from the danger zone, and handed him over to Frick for care. Subsequently, the 3 Red Gloves members focused on dealing with the wraith, Felly, striving to control it until the sealed artifact took effect. At 3:38 p.m., under the coordination of Klein, the police and the platform side orderly carried out the train interception work, and Officer Spearkawu was ordered to send Klein away. Affected by the wraith, Felly, Spear steered the carriage directly after leaving the police's line of sight, unconsciously approaching Felly. At 3:47 p.m., due to the accumulation of factors such as slippery roads, loose valves, and brake failure, train B5202 detached from the blockade set by the police and drove north along the tracks. Klein took Spear away from the carriage at the first moment he sensed something unusual, avoiding the danger of being crushed by the train, and learned after he woke up that the enemy had characteristics similar to the Mother. Klein used ritual magic to clear Spear's negative state and contacted Daily Simone through a messenger to report the situation. Subsequently, he chose to go to the area where the wraith was located by himself. At 3:49 p.m., Clifford was no longer losing control, the wraith, Feli, had disappeared, and the spirit vision check results were all normal. Therefore, Kaisman and the others were in a relatively relaxed state, carrying out emergency treatment for injuries at the scene. At this time, the out-of-control train was still maintaining a high speed, but it had a certain tendency to deflect when it previously crushed the carriage, and finally derailed before Kaisman and the others noticed, causing Edward and Frick to be seriously injured and fall into a coma, with the other three suffering minor injuries. The 30782, held by Edward, was also thrown away, far from everyone. Subsequently, Ince Zangwill appeared, and several spiritual bodies, including the wraith, Feli, appeared at the same time. To seize the opportunity, Kaisman tried to use the ashes of Saint Selena to control Ince Zangwill, while Walter, with the cooperation of Clifford, fired at the weak points of the Feli spiritual body that was still active. The damage caused by this move was limited, but the attack power shown by Feli was also relatively low, and the two sides reached a certain degree of stalemate. Soon, Clifford again showed signs of mental confusion, trying to lean towards Feli. This broke the balance of the situation and caused Walter to have loopholes earlier. She was forced to make a move to knock Clifford unconscious, and she herself was affected by the suddenly approaching Feli, beginning to act slowly and become alienated. Kaisman had already exhausted most of his spirituality and had to deal with various coincidental obstacles, making it difficult to provide substantial help. At this moment, Klein arrived in time, and by activating a talisman of the Sun domain of unknown origin, he forcibly dispersed Feli and the surrounding spiritual bodies, allowing Walter to recover. However, the power of the talisman partially dissipated onto Ince Zangwill, causing damage while also causing the ashes of Saint Selena to instinctively contract, giving him a chance to escape. Taking advantage of this gap, Ince Zangwill opened the gate of the underworld, luckily, obtained the help of one of the powerful spiritual bodies inside, and briefly broke free from the restriction range of Saint Selena's ashes, though he himself had no more to do due to the exhaustion of his spirituality. But the appearance of the spiritual body induced the stripped Beander characteristic of Clifford to show activated characteristics, exerting the influence of Requiem, without distinguishing between friend and foe, with the lowest sequence Clifford and Klein bearing the brunt. Before losing his ability to act, Klein activated the talisman again, forcing back this spiritual body, and also cut off the possibility of Ince Zangwill opening the gate of the underworld widely in a short time. Just as Kaisman was preparing to control Ince Zangwill again, the other party's figure disappeared. Perhaps it was a special ability derived from the soul that he had concealed. Ince Zangwill showed a characteristic in the sense of mysticism that was easily overlooked and confused. This characteristic once again concentrated the attention of everyone present. Even if Kaisman used the ability of Midnight Poet to stimulate, it still failed to make the other party reveal his figure. Without warning, that powerful and originally tough spiritual body exploded under this stimulation. The relatively conscious Kaisman and Walter were severely mentally impacted and completely lost consciousness. As early as when receiving the telegram from the Tingan City Nighthawks squad, Senior Deacon in Sequence 4 Callista Diro, who was waiting in nearby Mon City, had already set off for Tingan with the help of a sealed artifact of the door pathway. It was just that, under the obstruction of various coincidences, she was a step late in reaching the scene. When she arrived, only the 5 unconscious and dying members of the Red Gloves remained at the scene, as well as the corpse of Klein Moretti, who had been pierced by a bullet. The ashes of Saint Selena had been taken away. Regarding Ince Zangwill, a rapidly decaying lower leg belonging to him was found at the scene, initially judged to be the backlash from the soul, or perhaps the product of a failed move by a powerhouse of the death pathway. As for the Tingan City Nighthawks squad, all members except Klein were injured due to the battle with the sealed artifact, with varying degrees of severity. The 2 internal guards of the Chinese gate on that day were also seriously injured and were forcibly sent back to recuperate. The Cardinal Council decided to temporarily lower the positioning of the Tingan City Nighthawks squad, transfer the sealed artifacts that were difficult to manage, and make a decision after the subsequent recovery of vitality. Note 1. This incident was a theft operation against the ashes of Saint Selena planned by Ince Zangwill. With the assistance of 008, his danger and difficulty are far higher than his original sequence. Subsequent actions against Ince Zangwill should pay special attention to concealment, and perhaps the protection of the goddess will be needed when necessary. Note 2. Need to pay attention to the role played by Woolen Soroth in this incident. His last appearance at the Blackthorn Security Company happened just before Jelen Scar appeared, and the timing of the two was too close. According to Clifford B.N.O., he already had doubts about Woolen when he was investigating whether Woolen participated in the Backland Nighthawk's dream entry incident. Later, Clifford learned from a passerby that an explosion had occurred on Zodland Street, which also deepened his suspicion of Woolen due to the timing, and under the push of various negative emotions, he leaned toward the trend of losing control. Note 3. Krestya Sexisima had a tolerant attitude towards Woolen Sorov, based on his special ability to possibly remain awake in dreams and channeling, and attributed it to the promise of the goddess. In fact, there is no solid evidence that Woolen possesses this special ability, and making this inference without receiving an oracle, Krestya has problems of dereliction of duty and impropriety. In this regard, the Pope has decided to present the situation before the goddess and wait for his decision. Reporter, Senior Deacon Callista Diro, 7th Squad Captain of Red Gloves, Casement Bray, Tingen City Nighthawks Squad Captain Dunn Smith. Sealer, Senior Deacon Krestya Sexisima. End of report. Chapter 57, Goodbye, Cat. Weekend felt like the sky was falling. She had only gone out for a quick stroll, just one. How could the human she kept at home have run away? Where is the person? Where is the human? The first day. Weekend nimbly squeezed indoors. The decorative grills by the window were narrow, but they were enough for her to pass through. After patrolling her territory, she found a large bag of open jerky, a bowl of clean water, and a wooden basin filled with thick sand. Well, the human kept at home was quite sensible. Wait, the person who tore the jerky for her was gone too. The cat was huffy. The cat was hungry. The cat buried her head and ate heartily. The second day. Weekend lay somewhat bored in her fluffy nest and rolled over. Is the human coming back to eat? Why has there been no movement? Could it be that he felt there was no future in hanging out with her and went to find another cat? She could hunt too. The cat is very strong. Human, come back, the cat won't use you to sharpen her claws anymore. The cat will catch big rats for you. The third day. There was still plenty of jerky left, but the cat's bathroom was smelly, and the cat didn't like it. Weekend kicked and bit the jerky, moving it to the furthest end of the room. The water too. Weekend kicked and bit the bowl, moving it to the furthest end of the room. But the water seemed to have spilled completely. The cat's little brain wasn't big enough to figure these things out. The cat was a little thirsty. And missed the human a little. Human, the cat is going to bite you. Weekend curled up uneasily, her nose twitching slightly. Little dummy. In a corner no one noticed, a soul sighed softly. The fourth day. Weekend suddenly sprang up from Woolen's bed, her round eyes wide, and began scratching at the air in front of her. There's a strange thing. The strange thing wants to touch the cat. Stay away from the cat. Only the human kept by the cat can smooth the cat's fur. The human kept by the cat will be back soon. The cat hissed fiercely, her fur puffing up with a shush, like a dandelion about to take flight. The fifth day. Human, the cat is thirsty. Hurry back, the cat won't bite you anymore. Weekend lay dejectedly on Woolen's bed, not understanding where the fellow who used to carry her around had gone. Human, the cat isn't very strong. The cat can catch big rats, but she can't beat the bad people outside, nor the bad cats outside. Human, are you doing well out there? Do the cats outside not want your offerings? The cat can do it too. The cat can eat a little less too. The cat will save jerky for you to eat. Click clack, there's movement at the door. Blinking her eyes, Weekend suddenly propped herself up and darted to the door with a whoosh. Human, why did you ignore the cat for so long? The cat wants to drink water. The cat wants jerky torn into tiny pieces. The cat is going to keep sleeping on your quilt. Sleep on one and pee on one. You're not allowed to be angry. The cat, meow. Weekend sat blankly at the door. The fellow holding a piece of wire doesn't seem to be the human, Weekend really was a very, very stupid cat. Woolen sighed. The pale and sickly young man straightened his crisp new tailcoat, knelt down, extended a knuckle, and waited patiently for his little cat to come forward and sniff. Hello there, little Weekend. Our first meeting, and why are you already showing your belly? On the afternoon of September 19th, West District, 2 Daffodil Street. Ha ha ha, Melissa, tell me, isn't it interesting? He's practically like a curly-haired baboon rolling around for a banana. Benson forced his voice to brighten, feigning excitement as he recounted the most ridiculous and clumsy anecdotes in his mind. But these things, which always managed to elicit a knowing smile from his younger siblings in the past, seemed to have lost all their appeal today, becoming dry and cold. The smile on his face collapsed frame by frame, and the room fell back into a dead silence. Maybe the timing wasn't right, the elder brother clumsily consoled himself. Klein had only just been buried, he should give his sister some time. Tomorrow was still the weekend. He could take Melissa to see a play or a circus performance. It wouldn't cost too much, they still had some savings. The £6,000 that suddenly surfaced in his mind stung him. Benson's lips moved several times before finally squeezing out a complete sentence. I'm going to the bathroom for a moment. Like many times over the past 6 days, the long and messy sound of running water came from the bathroom. Knock, knock. Melissa's statue-like figure moved, looking toward the source of the sound. Someone was knocking at the door. Knock, knock, knock. The sound wasn't urgent, but it carried a sense of persistence. Melissa. Benson hurried out of the bathroom, water stains still unmanaged on his face. Did you have an appointment with someone? Melissa shook her head silently and stood up, preparing to open the door for the unknown visitor. Let me do it. Benson instinctively took a few quick steps, blocking Melissa's path. Hello. What met Benson's eyes was a formally dressed, slender young man. He seemed to suffer from some chronic illness, his complexion was pale with an unnatural flush, and even just standing there, his steps seemed unsteady. Besides his new and sophisticated charcoal black tailcoat, the cat lying obediently in his arms also caught Benson's attention. Hello, Mr. Moretti. I am Cyril Columbus, a novelist. The young man seemed to catch Benson's wariness and quickly explained his purpose. As you can see, my health is very poor, and I cannot take good care of this cat. Although it is abrupt, may I ask if you and Miss Moretti have any intention of taking her in? She is a very good cat and won't cause the two of you much trouble. I will also provide a sufficient one-time payment as compensation. I don't know you, Benson responded somewhat bluntly. And I haven't heard my family mention you either. Yes, I don't know the two of you either, Cyril explained patiently. This cat belongs to Mr. Wulian Yassos. You might have some impression. Miss Moretti once helped design a mobility device for her. Mr. Yassos, we met him, on Elizabeth's birthday. He had also written to Klein before. Melissa pulled at Benson and added in a low voice. Klein. Benson's tone softened slightly, but he still had questions. So, why look for us? And you are. Mr. Yassos, regrettably, he is an irresponsible fellow. He hadn't anticipated the situation of this child getting lost. To catch a steam train, he commissioned me to find the cat for him and paid a large sum for her care. In my recent health condition, hey. Mr. Yassos once spoke with me about this cat and was very grateful for Miss Moretti's help, considering her a kind and responsible lady. The reason for this presumptuous intrusion is to confirm if you two are willing to adopt her. This would be the best home for the cat. But if you have no such intention, I will look for a suitable boarding facility, and you can just act as if I never came. Though it was a bit abrupt and forced. Benson looked the cat over. Her fur was snow-white and fluffy, and her face was clean. Her owner must have taken quite good care of her. At the moment, she was lying lazily in Cyril's arms, looking good-tempered, and she seemed very healthy. I'm fine with it. Benson looked at Melissa. Do you want to adopt her? Melissa pursed her lips. Can we take good care of her? And regarding the costs, that meant she didn't dislike the idea. As for care, the maidservant could handle some of the chores. Regarding costs, it depended on how much the owner would provide. A cat surely wouldn't cost too much. Moreover, Melissa's recent state made the scales in Benson's heart tilt a bit. None of those are problems, as long as you want to. Facing her brother's encouragement, Melissa turned to look at the stranger standing quietly aside. All right, what is her name? Weekend. Cyril lowered his eyes and gently rubbed the cat's little head, but, Mr. Yassos said that since he cannot be responsible for this cat, he shouldn't consider himself the owner anymore. As the new owner, you are completely free to give her a new name. Weekend. Melissa mulled over the name. Since she's a girl, let's call her Claire. Is that okay, Claire? Meow. Chapter 58. Hello, cat. Ah, sorry, sir. The sickly young man peeked out from behind the large bouquet of flowers in his arms, clumsily apologizing to the gentleman he had bumped into. It's fine. The bronze-skinned gentleman with soft features adjusted his top hat and took the bouquet of white begonias handed to him by the shopkeeper. He didn't take this small interlude to heart, his gaze merely lingering for a moment on that passionate and brilliant bouquet. Bright yellow interwoven with multiple colors, dahlias, symbolizing a new beginning. Thinking of his modest and gentle student who had passed away so young, Isaac lowered his eyes, pushed open the door, and walked slowly toward Raphael's cemetery, the resting place of that young man. The door closed softly, and the copper bell under the eaves swayed in the cool breeze, scattering the words of the young man behind him as he ordered flowers for a memorial service. Raphael's cemetery at night was extremely cold, devoid of any sign of the living. The teacher stood silently for a long time before placing a bouquet of pure white begonias in front of a brand new tombstone. Sorry, I'm late. I couldn't save him. Nor am I able to bring you back. I will make him pay the price. It won't be long. Azek muttered to himself in a low voice. He took one last look at the young man in the portrait, green, reserved, with a scholarly air about him, smiling somewhat shyly. The visitor's figure silently vanished within the cemetery. The crimson moonlight flowed like water, spilling across the forest of tombstones and adding a touch of enchantment to the solemn black and white portraits. Knock, knock. It seemed as if someone was politely knocking on a door. Click, phew. As if someone was lightly pushing open a door. Shish. As if, no, not as if. Someone had indeed risen from the dead. Indeed, a gentleman who had already been laid to rest and should have been well behaved, had pushed open his coffin lid, pried open the stone slab, and was sitting up in that narrow bed to enjoy the breeze. Klein looked around in a daze, finding his surroundings quite familiar yet somewhat strange. Raphael's cemetery is a special area where anomalies might occur. He had patrolled here quite often. But, he never thought that one day, he would be the anomaly crawling out of the coffin. As a newbie corpse, Klein subconsciously lowered his head and unbuttoned his shirt bit by bit until the dark, slowly wriggling and healing entry wound on his chest was revealed. Did I die again? He hissed, beginning to recall what had happened before. I was affected by something at the time and gradually lost my reaction to the outside world. That effect was a bit like quiet hair. The only enemy unit then was in Zangwil, a defected archbishop. It definitely has something to do with him. Well, once I'm settled, I'll go above the grey fog to perform a divination. While thinking, he used his hands to vault out of the grave, closed his coffin lid, and packed the soil on the burial mound. During this, prompted by his spirituality, he found the copper whistle belonging to Mr. Azek. Fortunately, cremation isn't popular in this world, and people don't plant trees or flowers or pour cement over graves. Looking at this healing speed, I should have enough left to die 2 more times. Klein finally fastened the ceiling stone slab, buttoned his shirt, and brushed the dirt off his formal suit with hardtape. Benson and Melissa really aren't being frugal enough. Phew, according to the benefits in the contract, my pension should have reached their hands. It won't be a small amount. Speaking of which, does this count as faking death for insurance fraud? Well, they have savings, I have the chance to return to life, we all have a bright future. At this thought, his muttering suddenly paused, and an exaggeratedly bright smile appeared on his face. After calming his emotions for a while, Klein finally turned his gaze to his own tombstone. The best brother, the best colleague. The worrying Melissa. Benson, who had a soft spot for curly-haired baboons. The forgetful yet reliable captain. The poet classmate with no literary talent. And Frey, Luo Yao, and the others who had taken care of him. Klein felt a pang in his nose as he read the unfinished sorrow beneath the inscription. I wonder how the captain and the others are doing. He somewhat anxiously unfastened his pendulum and tried to divine the safety of his colleagues. Thank God, they were all still alive. It's good that they're alive, it's good they're alive. As someone who had inexplicably come back to life, Klein knew full well how much trouble it would cause if he were discovered. There would be scares, reports, and inquiries from the church. Those weren't problems he could explain. This place was not to be stayed in for long. Taking a deep look at the grave belonging to Klein Moretti, the nameless wandering soul avoided the gravedigger's patrols and finally succeeded in walking out of the gates of Raphael's cemetery later that night. What next? He had no cash on him and could only wait until tomorrow to find a bank and withdraw the £342 from his anonymous account. Klein walked slower and slower. The more he thought, the more flustered he became. He only then remembered. On the day when all those coincidences happened, as, the fool, he had heard a prayer from an unknown source. Excluding Miss Justice, Mr. Hanged Man, and the Sun, it seemed only the fellow who stole his property could know his 3-line honorific name. After standing still for a good while, the light finally returned to Klein's dull eyes, which then ignited with layers of anger. If it really was a thief who claimed his private property, fine, let him wash his neck and wait. Once he found a suitable place to settle down, he would definitely let him know what it meant to be a cult leader. Does he know how the great pirate Kilangos died? Busy making threats in his heart, Klein failed to notice that there were other pedestrians in the midnight alleys besides himself. And this gentleman, who was clearly not there by mistake, was carrying a bouquet of flowers that was inappropriately bright and was walking toward him with a clear purpose. Good evening, Mr. Klein. The sickly, thin young man in formal attire spoke abruptly, presumptuously interrupting the gentleman's moment of distraction. Or should I say, classmate Joe Mingrui. The youth narrowed his eyes good-naturedly, the corners of his lips curling up uncontrollably. Klein, Joe Mingrui. Who is this person? What does he know? Having been immersed in the Beander world for over 2 months and knowing full well how mysterious and extraordinary this world was, Klein didn't feel the slightest bit of joy at meeting a fellow countryman. His body stiffened as he feigned confusion and met the other's gaze, only to feel that the youth's expression held a level of confidence and amusement that suggested he had Klein right where he wanted him. Sir, you must have the wrong person. Klein tried to play dumb. His facial expression remained unchanged, but every hair under his clothes stood on end, every cell screaming in alert and vigilance. What was going on? He hadn't even noticed someone approaching. Had his spiritual warning failed? Was it a mid to high sequence powerhouse? Or should he have divined which path to take? And how did he know his real name? Even if he were a fellow countryman, it shouldn't be possible. Neither Joe Mingrui nor the current Klein had the habit of writing diaries. Could the other person be the mastermind who brought him to this world, the so-called celestial worthy of heaven and earth for blessings? Wouldn't such an appearance be a bit lacking in style? Or does this world really have abilities like mind reading? From Miss Justice's performance, a telepathist's ability is just observation and analysis at the level of mysticism. While it seems like they can read minds, they can't completely grasp what the observed person is thinking. Damn it, he had just come out of the ground and had nothing on him for self-protection. Mr. Azek's copper whistle was probably one. Hopefully, there would still be a chance to use it. The balance of a clown might support him in jumping over a wall to escape, but that would only treat the symptoms and not the cause, and it wasn't safe enough. Or, should he resurrect again? He wasn't sure how much the other person knew about his resurrection method. What if they deliberately camped his body? Klein's brain worked rapidly, but he couldn't find even a single answer that could be confirmed. There were too few clues and too many possible directions. Letting out a barely perceptible sigh, Klein waited for the other's response. At the same time, his fingers silently reached into his pocket and touched that strange copper whistle. I am Woolen Sorov, or should I say, alternate identity. The youth tilted his head under the gaze of the tense and guarded gentleman. By the way, I'm speaking Chinese. Impossible. Klein refuted quickly. Whether Wulian was speaking Chinese or not, could he not hear it? But he suddenly realized something. Waves of regret mixed with a sense of powerlessness enveloped him completely at an equally impressive speed. Yes, whether Wulian was speaking Chinese or not, could he not hear it? Then why could he, an ordinary local from Loan, hear it? Klein knew that he still had a tiny bit of room to struggle, for example, arguing that his refutation was directed at the fact that the other person wasn't Wulian. But that no longer had much meaning. PFF'd. Seeing Klein's dejected face, Wulian couldn't help but let out a mischievous laugh. Falling into this situation wasn't because Xiao Ke wasn't cautious, or rather, was it because he was too cautious? A person's energy is limited. When Klein put almost all his mind into guarding against his words and actions, his control over himself would slacken considerably. Not to mention that Wulian had laid out his identity and set up another smoke screen. See, didn't that just trick it out? Soon, he composed his expression and invited Klein with a serious face. This isn't the place to talk. Do you mind staying at my place for a while? I mind very much, do I dare say that? Let's go. Klein responded helplessly. Although he didn't know how Wulian had become like this, he couldn't even confirm if this was the Wulian he knew. This mysterious appearance was indeed very familiar. Oh, right. Klein subconsciously looked over at the sound and was stuffed with a lapful of bright red and yellow bouquets by Wulian. Although it's not worth congratulating, but I wish your new life goes smoothly and beautifully. Wulian's smile was faint. Good luck. The Lord of Yellow and Black who governs good luck being wished good luck by someone else. Klein got a sense of weird humor, and his somewhat heavy mood was also stunned by this series of intrusive events. Well, maybe things aren't that bad. Chapter 59, Strangers in a Foreign Land. Click clack, clack. All right, please come in. After a crisp sound, the heavy solid wood-carved door swung wide open, welcoming the two gentlemen returning late. Wulian bent the iron wire a few times and stuffed it into his pocket, appearing quite satisfied with his handiwork. He took a few quick steps, lit the gas lamp in the living room, and turned back to gesture, please, to Klein. This is the first time I've seen someone have to pick the lock to enter their own home. Klein, harboring doubts about the property rights of the house, entered the den of thieves somewhat hesitantly. Would you like some black tea? Or a cup of coffee? The unfamiliar-looking young man leaned back on the sofa in a relaxed posture. If you're used to it, I can also brew some milk tea. No need to trouble yourself. Klein sat on the opposite sofa as indicated, his body sinking slightly, but his feet were firmly planted on the floor, a posture that facilitated quick reactions. Well, as you wish. Wulian followed the flow and poured 2 cups of warm water, placing one of them in front of Klein. Whether he drinks it or not isn't important, a drink must be placed before a guest. This is etiquette. Etiquette. So, he first threw a wall of spirituality that was better than nothing in front of Klein, then sat down properly on the sofa and took a small sip of warm water. Where should I begin? Where should he start? This was a question Wulian had thought about for a long time. In the world I come from, there is a novel called Lord of the Mysteries, written by Cuttlefish. And you, Klein Moretti, are precisely the protagonist of the book. No. Whether Xiao Ke believed in the concept of transmigrating into a book wasn't the most pressing issue. The trouble was what he would think after believing it. Knowing this was a world inside a book, what would he, as a character in it, think? If it involved the subsequent plot, would this foreknowledge cause the situation to deviate from its original track and instead become a catalyst for the worst ending? As a high-level existence who seemed out of place in this world, how should Wulian himself handle it? Live on, look for a possibility to return home, and let the characters he liked have relatively better outcomes. What he sought was nothing more than these 3 things. So, from a utilitarian perspective, what should he do? Should he reveal a bit of his own extraordinariness in front of Klein in a manner similar to Mr. Azek? Or perhaps, like Leonard and Emmeline, naturally create intersections with Xiao Ke's life? After gaining a certain amount of trust, he could be discovered by Xiao Ke as a fellow traveler, hiding his own secrets, and eventually, be honest with each other, becoming a confidant, with whom he could talk about anything and share common goals. Well, he admitted, he confessed, just now, when he was scaring Klein out of a wicked sense of humor, his actions were far removed from pure utility. Even without that prank born of a whim, for the sake of rewriting the endings of Old Neil, Cohen Lee, the captain, and the others, the mysterious fellow, Wulian, would have been exposed early on anyway. Well, if this were a novel, he probably would have shown his tail by chapter 10, right? What a headache. From Klein's perspective, this gentleman calling himself Wulian only paused for a moment before speaking as if he had prepared his words long ago. To introduce myself again, I am alternate identity from the great Foodie Empire, a university student. My identity in this world is Wulan Sorov, a member of a branch of a Beander family. Yasos is just a pseudonym. Because I didn't submit my final assignment, I transmigrated to this world. Well, I can't see any connection between the 2 either. Maybe it's my cheat code. Halfway through, he seemed to remember something, raised his right hand with 3 fingers toward the sky, and made a vow gesture. Let's get this straight first, everything I say is the truth. At least as far as my knowledge goes. Thumb and pinky pressed together, the 3 upright fingers not overlapping, the gesture is quite standard. Could this young gentleman be like me, a polymath, who knows a bit of everything? Klein's thoughts drifted for a moment, then he nodded to Wulian, signaling him to continue. On the first night I arrived here, I had a long and strange dream. I saw the story about you, how you gradually became Klein Moretti with the identity of the Earthling Joe Mingrui, joined the Nighthawk squad, consumed the seer potion, and went to the divination club to act. It was almost like a documentary centered on your perspective. As the plot developed, Old Neil, Cohen Lee, Captain Dunn, and you, all walked toward death under the guidance of Ince Zangwill. I saw your resurrection and knew this was only the starting point of your journey, understanding that you would eventually lead the story to a fairly good conclusion. But, Wulian lowered his head, the upturned corners of his mouth showing no hint of a smile, instead overflowing with a touch of mockery. Sorry, I couldn't seem to help but interfere. Old Neil, Cohen Lee, Captain. Klein remained vigilant, not prepared to fully accept Wulian's explanation. It's just, no one noticed that a piano had appeared in Old Neil's living room, and no one reminded him that Old Neil had always remained single. It was the captain who, as if with foreknowledge, took them to forcibly interrupt Old Neil's loss of control process. Cohen Lee was the Nighthawk squad member with the least seniority besides himself. When facing Madame Sharon, the captain gave him more instructions, changing his usual habit of directly dragging the enemy into a dream, and even specifically added Sika and Frey to prevent accidents. If not for the Red Gloves squad suddenly being stationed in Tingen, that fugitive from Fugar town, that wraith named Feli, and that Sequence 5 former archbishop might have all been faced by the Tingen City Nighthawks. And Lanrius, whose journey was obstructed by Wulian. Since Lanrius's schemes had too much to do with Tingen City and he was arrested under the captain's lead, the Holy Cathedral sent a telegram to Tingen after taking over the person. Due to authority issues, the captain did not reveal too much to them. But just from the relieved expression of this veteran Nighthawk, it was definitely a trouble that was beyond measure. According to the captain, based on Lanrius's heinous deeds, this swindler who was good at provocation became a glorious, experimental subject. Well, the kind without any human rights. Perhaps one day when he looks through the sealed artifact archives, he might catch a glimpse of a corner of his miserable life. Oh, forgot, he had already retired, due to circumstances. Thank you, Klein responded seriously. I'm not sure if this counts as a good thing. Wulian picked up the water cup with feigned calmness, sipping it in small gulps, looking very busy. The meeting at the tavern on Beshich Street was purely accidental, but the one at the Divination Club was my deliberate approach. Coupled with your status as a Hoi University graduate, the address you left me, your reaction after receiving my hints, every test result proved that what I saw was more or less the truth. But as facts changed one by one, I found it increasingly difficult to see the future direction. This sounds a bit like a charlatan. Wulian tried to take another sip from the water cup, only to realize with regret that the cup was already empty. People are always busy when they are embarrassed. Klein chuckled inwardly, not expecting this familiar acting fellow countryman to actually be an introverted guy. As an excellent keyboard warrior, he began to apply his psychological accumulation to help the inexperienced young man across from him find a topic. So, what's with your current appearance? Wulian then realized there was a flaw in his introduction, forgot to mention, due to the side effects of a Beander item, I am currently in a spirit body state. This body comes from Mr. Cyril Columbus. He suffered from severe tuberculosis and had reached the end of his life. Seemingly with natural high spirituality, he saw me and made a deal with me. Mr. Cyril allowed me to borrow his body, and I promised him a decent funeral. No wonder the formal wear on him looks so new, like the tags were just removed. Klein nodded, expressing understanding. Organizing his thoughts, Wulian, because of a cheat code from an unknown source, saw a plot centered on himself in a dream. It seems the poet classmate isn't the only protagonist of the era. Is this a kind of prophecy? Or has this world been restarted? Or is it a deduction? Counting from when he transmigrated, Klein suddenly realized one thing. Wulian mentioned Zhou Mingbrui, and mentioned Klein. If he witnessed everything up to now, then regarding the fool, regarding that mysterious existence above the gray fog. Mr. Klein. Wulian called out somewhat sheepishly to the fellow countryman, who was lost in thought, can I learn about Mr. the Fool, from you? I once took the liberty of chanting his name while escaping, but he didn't seem to deign to respond. What does that mean? Klein collected his thoughts, pondering Wulian's subtext. This tone. Wulian doesn't know he is the fool. He just thinks he has some friendship, or rather connection, with the fool. His cheat code can't break through the barrier of the gray fog. If the three-part true name belonging to the fool was called by Wulian, then no one should have touched his gold pounds, P2E. Then Wulian must have failed to see the scenes of him performing the luck reversal ritual, and his biggest secret can continue to be hidden. It feels a bit unfair to young Mr. Wulian's total honesty. But, let it be. As for the connection between Klein and the fool, the explanation used for Miss Justice seems like a good choice. My lord, Mr. the Fool, seems to be an ancient existence who has initially awakened. His response indeed has the possibility of delay. The newly minted retainer of the Fool felt he was overacting and pulled back a bit. He is a tolerant existence and probably won't do anything to you. And I suspect he holds a certain amount of goodwill toward us. Have you seen Roussel Gustave's inventions, or quotes? Mr. the Fool is currently collecting this senior's diary. Wulian's eyes widened quite a bit in shock, like the astonishment after a hypothesis was confirmed. No. Maybe it's not goodwill, but Mr. the Fool himself possesses an authority similar to omniscience. Wait a minute, my lord. You've become his retainer. Beautiful. That's exactly the effect I wanted. Klein expressed satisfaction at Wulian's quick understanding. Yes. The young man quickly recovered from the shock, his eyes darting around as he pointed to himself half-jokingly. Senior, do you think there's hope for me? Pushing your luck, are you? Is a retainer something you can become just because you want to? Where is Mr. the Fool's style? No, status. Klein was both annoyed and amused, and suddenly felt a desire to play a prank. He abruptly pulled a long face, staring expressionlessly at Wulian, his brown eyes flickering with a cold luster. The smile on the young man's face instantly froze and gradually faded away, until he finally sat honestly, eyes on his nose and nose on his heart, not daring to utter a single word. The atmosphere suddenly became heavy and deathly silent. Believe in the power of the gods. Klein spoke slowly. This famous quote from Discworld was classic enough and fitting enough for the occasion. But don't believe in their mercy. Wulian stammered a few times and hung his head dejectedly. Where he couldn't see, Klein's lips twitched twice, desperately holding back from laughing out loud. The clown ability was as useful as ever. No wonder this kid exposed his secrets the moment they met. Scaring people is really fun. Good, good, good. Since he understands what that prayer was about, he can also feel at ease going above the gray fog to deal with this fellow. Go and learn how to respect the gods properly from Mr. Hanged Man. Chapter 60, Mr. Lovers. Before his eyes was a tide of crimson light surging forward. His soul seemed to lose its form, rising ethereally and helplessly, heading straight for the hall of gray fog that interpreted eternity and greatness. Perhaps he should thank his transcendent status. What Wulian perceived went far beyond the crimson light itself. To use an analogy, he arrived at Saphira Castle as if taking a sightseeing elevator, allowing him to witness the scenery along the way before his audience. And at the end of this pilgrimage road, he caught sight of a red and yellow patch of color, not too surprisingly. It was a corner of a jagged scroll with childish brushstrokes and vivid colors. Found it. Wulian came back to his senses, his vision filled with gray-white fog. He was sitting on a high-backed chair of classical design, and before him was the modeled and ancient long bronze table that had appeared countless times in the original work. The texture is quite good, should I say it's worthy of being one of the contributors to creating a sense of mystery above the gray fog. He muttered in his heart, and without needing Xiao Kei's invitation, he looked towards the head of the long bronze table as if he had a premonition. Shrouded by layers of gray fog, the deity who did not belong to this era sat high in the seat of honor, looking down at the newcomer from an overseeing perspective. His face was blurred, his head slightly lowered, seemingly with a sense of pity, yet as if nothing in the world concerned him. Not to be pried into, unfathomable, not to be desecrated, although he knew clearly that beneath the gray fog was still that friendly and gentle gentleman in a top hat, who might even be secretly complaining about his reaction at this moment. Wulian still marveled at that unfathomable and lofty image. It was really handsome and intimidating. Mr. the Fool, how terrifying. Good evening, Mr. the Fool. The chestnut-haired, brown-eyed youth was dazed for a moment, but quickly reacted, standing up and bowing seriously. Although he couldn't completely see the other's appearance through the gray fog, Klein easily confirmed Wulian's identity. Speaking of which, he had imagined whether the other party's spirit body would take on the appearance of an earthling. As it turned out, this fellow countryman was just like him, a person who was quite consistent inside and out. What was the situation? Had he been assimilated by the original owner? It's a pity I've only seen the spirit bodies of these two outlanders. The sample size is too small to summarize any patterns. Hey, it seems you have already learned some things. Klein leaned back in a relaxed posture, his knuckles silently tapping the armrest of the high-backed chair, creating an aura belonging to a high-ranking individual. You seem to want to become my retainer. The existence behind the gray fog spoke in a playful tone, as if seeing through the little thoughts of the person before him. This sentence was quite skillful. It could be seen as a common inquiry, a warning, or even a demonstration of Mr. the Fool's powerful control over his retainers. Klein was very satisfied with his performance. Become Xiao Kei's retainer. Emulate Klein, join Klein, serve Klein. This level of drama was second only to Klein serving Klein in dressing and washing. Wulian's train of thought suddenly tripped a circuit breaker. Yes, Mr. the Fool. He spoke cautiously, choosing his words carefully. I once had a brief exchange with one of your retainers, Mr. Klein Moretti. I admired the uniqueness he possesses due to your favor, and I also long to be one step closer to a great existence like you. I beg you to forgive my nonsensical presumption and arrogance, and please know that Mr. Klein Moretti has never taken any disrespectful actions towards you. Classmate, wake up, this isn't a structured interview site. Facing Wulian's pedantic behavior, Klein felt uncomfortable all over, but learning that Wulian didn't forget to clear his name while coaxing the evil god, he was somewhat moved. Although this young gentleman would be mischievous from time to time and even seem a bit reckless, he was quite a decent person. I don't care about these things. He replied in a low voice. Become my retainer. Hey, this requires a certain amount of observation. My little fellow countryman, you need to be more careful. If you really encountered the kind of evil god who acts on rumors and is good at catching linguistic loopholes, you wouldn't even know how you died. Don't keep saying things like, approaching a great existence, or, becoming a retainer, all the time. Besides you, there are others who have come here for various reasons. At their request, I hold regular gatherings and watch over them as they trade formulas, materials, information, and so on. Klein didn't follow up with an invitation. Instead, he stopped talking to see Wulian's reaction. Is Mr. Klein also a member of the gathering? Wulian restrained himself from staring eagerly at the seat of honor, trying his best to appear indifferent and casual. But in Klein's eyes, he still looked like a child who insisted on bringing an acquaintance to a banquet just to feel at ease. Not for now, Klein responded skillfully. Before I can open a Smurf account, it's impossible for Klein Moretti to appear in his original skin, he muttered to himself, still leaving some room for his future self. Mr. the Fool, can I apply to join? Wulian thought for a moment and raised his hand slightly, receiving an affirmative answer from the other party. I wonder if Xiao K, who is a week late, can still catch Master Russell's all black eye. It should be fine, right? As a seer, pathway that has advanced miracles, many things should be inevitable. A deck of tarot cards materialized in front of Wulian, fanning out and issuing a silent invitation to him. The gathering members all use tarot cards as code names. These are the cards that don't have owners yet, you can choose one. Klein gave a tip. Of course, the world wasn't among them, he planned to keep this card for himself. This was the host's privilege. Wulian also noticed a card was missing, and his brow involuntarily drooped a bit, feeling somewhat disappointed. It's not like he didn't know the weight of things, couldn't he just take a look to satisfy his curiosity? Stingy. Well, if the world card were placed in front of him, maybe his fun-loving nature would explode and he'd really snatch Xiao K's identity card, ha ha ha. I choose the Lovers card. Having eliminated the interference, he quickly made his choice. Alright, Mr. Lovers. Klein put away the cards without surprise and chuckled. Backland time, every Monday at 3 in the afternoon. Try to be alone. As you wish. Wulian stood up obediently, bowed, and his figure soon disappeared into the ancient hall. Early the next morning, Klein knocked on Wulian's door to bid him farewell. Last night above the gray fog, besides pulling his reckless little fellow countrymen into his camp, he also performed several targeted divinations. For example, confirming that the culprit who caused his death was indeed in Zhangwil, and for another, searching for where his hope of becoming stronger lay. Backland, he suddenly remembered the letter Wulian had written to him and began to hesitate about whether to ask him for advice on accommodation. The rental costs over there seemed quite high. Good morning, Mr. Klein. The young man opened the door, his eyes a bit hazy, clearly not fully awake yet. I'm preparing to leave for Backland, Klein said succinctly. I came to say goodbye. Backland. Wulian blinked his eyes and finally came to his senses. The expenses there are not small. Which district do you want to live in? I'll see if there are any unrented properties. The keys all went to Winter County with Wulian. It's fine, you stay in a hotel for a few days first, and I can mail the corresponding keys to Backland. Hey, being a Beander family is amazing, huh? Having properties is amazing, huh? Has your family already reached such a level of arrogance? Klein was greatly shocked, seemingly discovering for the first time that the young gentleman before him was a heinous capitalist, if having money counts as an original sin. As a glorious member of the proletariat, even if he had to sleep on the streets, even if he had to spend a large amount of savings, he would never. Sherwood Borough. He pressed down the brim of his hat, feeling a bit embarrassed. The rent can be charged normally. Or give a discount or something. He had seen the relevant newspapers and knew that renting a middle-class house over there would cost quite a bit, and it would be even more troublesome if the landlord didn't accept short-term leases. Finding a listing itself would take time and energy, not to mention the issue of identity documents. He wasn't planning on freeloading. He was just rationally allocating resources. Klein emphasized this to himself repeatedly in his heart. Sherwood Borough. Wulian walked back into the room, pulled out a map of Backland, and gestured at the markings on it. Found it. Looking surprised but having planned this for a long time, he pointed to a property, 52 Minsk Street. How about that? A 2-story house with an attic and a basement. Since the area isn't very large, well, about the same as this place, I'll charge you 5 sols a week, with no deposit or furniture usage fees. About the same as this place. Klein recalled the layout of this house. The first floor had a living room, dining room, kitchen, bathroom, and a guest room. The second floor had a sitting room, study, balcony, bathroom, and 2 bedrooms. The area of a single floor was over 50% larger than 2 Daffodil Street. This perfectly met his living and office needs. Wait, 5 sols a week. And no other fees. Klein looked in shock at the simple smiling Wulian. One must know that 2 Daffodil Street still cost them 12 sols and 3 pennies a week even after Benson's heavy bargaining. And that wasn't even counting the £2 deposit. I cannot accept this. He felt a bit of heartache, but responded with a firm attitude. Fine, then 6 souls. Wulian took the advice and raised the price slightly, though it was still obviously a fire sale price. Seeing that Klein was still hesitant, he spread his hands toward his fellow countryman, his whole body seemingly radiating a holy light. It's settled then. The rent can be deposited into my account. I'll send the details to you along with the keys. Don't worry too much about the cost. A house left empty for a long time is hard to maintain. Just consider the price difference as me buying some human presence for the place. Besides, I'll inevitably have to ask for your help in the future. He said the last sentence very quietly, mysteriously pointing at the ceiling, his whole being exuding a clever sort of silliness. Klein opened his mouth to speak but stopped, then tried again but hesitated. Student, lovers, honesty and sincerity are indeed good qualities, but... Sigh, forget it. Withdrawing money, buying a change of clothes, booking a ticket to Backland. With several hours left before departure, Klein carried his suitcase and found a seat in the waiting hall. There seemed to be quite a few passengers today. People were in groups of 3 or 5, noisily buying tickets, finding seats, and rushing for trains. It was bustling and incredibly loud. Klein wasn't the type who desperately needed silence, so he wasn't affected much. Since he was bored anyway, he simply treated the noise as white noise, letting his mind go blank and allowing his thoughts to drift aimlessly. Tarot Club, Wulian, Nighthawks, Mr. Azek, Backland, Seer Sequence, Benson, Melissa. As if thinking of something amusing, the corners of his lips slowly curled up. Why leave several hours of free time? What else couldn't he let go of? The answer was already obvious. Taking a public carriage back to Narcissus Street, Klein pulled down his top hat, hiding his face in the shadow of the brim. He lifted a foot but didn't dare step toward that familiar and warm residence, only managing to turn away somewhat awkwardly and hide in a blind spot of the building opposite. His gaze was distant and empty, seemingly lingering on the slightly aged door of 2 Daffodil Street, wandering over the bay window with drawn curtains, and appearing to look through the house's furnishings, at something else. He waited for a long time. The clip-clop of public carriages sounded repeatedly, and the conversations of pedestrians drew near and faded away, yet he failed to detect any movement. Whether out of regret or relief, Klein let out a long breath, preparing to take a public carriage back to the train platform. Creak, the sound of a small hinge turning rang out, and the door he had been closely watching opened. The door of this house was a bit old. Melissa had said long ago that she wanted to lubricate it, but she just couldn't bring herself to spend money on new grease. Klein suddenly recalled this small detail. Claire, come back. The girl's voice rang out abruptly, with a slight hoarseness, yet adding a precious touch of vividness amidst her urgency and annoyance. The similar pronunciation gave Klein a start. He snapped back to his senses and looked over, only to see a white, fluffy ball of fur dash out the door, scrambling and rolling toward his position in a zigzag fashion. Perhaps the timing was just right, perhaps the former Nighthawk was agile, or perhaps this pampered cat's running posture was off. In any case, by the time Klein reacted, he was already holding a long-haired white cat that had lost its dreams and was flopping occasionally like a large carp. Claire, Klein, this is the cat Melissa is raising. I definitely can't let go. If I let go and the cat gets lost, Melissa will be sad, but Melissa, she will definitely walk over here to find the cat. She's already determined the direction and is walking toward me. Ah no, I can't be exposed. I should probably let the cat go after all, but this is the cat Melissa is raising. Let me handle it. The young man's sigh-like voice sounded in Klein's ear, which at this moment was like heavenly music to him. Klein's stalled brain returned to smooth operation. He handed the cat over to the next person with crisp efficiency, suppressed the myriad of thoughts in his heart, and quickly left his original hiding spot. Even without Wulian coming to the rescue, he wouldn't have remained conflicted forever. It was just that when it involved family, he always had an extra measure of hesitation. Perhaps his subconscious procrastination was because he still harbored a sliver of hope for a reunion. When Melissa hurried across the street and found this corner, what she saw was Wulian with a poor complexion, struggling to dodge the cat's punches and kicks. Mr. Cyril, she asked in surprise. Sorry. Miss Moretti, could you? Wulian leaned back just in time, barely dodging another of Claire's attacks. Although the reason was unclear, Melissa easily saw Wulian's unspoken plea and quickly came to the rescue, scooping the troublesome cat back. Phew, I'm alive again. Wulian let out an exaggerated sigh of relief. I was just passing by. How is this little fellow so enthusiastic? The new owner, guilty of poor supervision, pursed her lips, deliberating how to explain to him. After only one day of being raised, this stupid cat had already learned to escape and hit people. I'm so sorry. Ah, you don't need to say that to me. Wulian wanted to offer a few more words of comfort, but his gaze was drawn to the hurrying Benson. Mr. Moretti is here too, I have some urgent business, so please excuse me. He gave a grand bow and took one last look at the dejected Joe Claire before quickly fleeing the scene. Wulian was indeed passing by. Because he had entrusted Claire to the Moretti siblings the day before, he wasn't sure if the added variable would mean Benson would still take Melissa to the circus. This was likely the last chance Xiao would have to see them before leaving. So before attending to his main business, he had specifically detoured to Narcissus Street to see if he could confirm the Moretti siblings' plans. Who knew he'd almost get a face full of cat punches as soon as he arrived. His eyes drooped wetly as he slowly picked off the lint stuck to his formal suit. You little ungrateful thing. Due to his stiff movements, his actions were slightly labored. Finally, he tidied himself up again and continued toward the burial place he had scouted out earlier. It was a quiet and elegant small building with some plants and flowers. Cyril, as an author, should like it. Calculating the time, the funeral company he had contacted in advance would be arriving soon. Mr. Cyril Columbus lay peacefully in the glossy black coffin with his hands folded over his abdomen, enjoying a long sleep that had come several hours late. His story ended in Tingen. But the stories of many more had only just begun. End of volume. Side Story 5, Waking Up, This Bystander Unexpectedly Became a Genius Employee, Part 1. Lord of the Mysteries * Lobotomy Corporation. The author hasn't seriously researched the world building and only completed the true ending. Warning for setting errors, and lack of logic. Practiced. Personal setting. The Tarot Club members in this text are merely projections, a collection of concepts, and have nothing to do with the actual characters. Come on, everyone chant with me. 3, 2, 1, throw your brains away. Gurgle gurgle gurgle. Click. ... Status normal. Second debugging. ... Permitted. ... Quote. Hey, wake up, senior. His shoulders seemed to be gripped by someone, followed by a violent shaking. Senior Wulian. The soul-summoning calls echoed eerily in his ears, accompanied by super intense movement. No normal person could keep sleeping through that. Sen, IOR. What is it, what is it, what is it? The chestnut-haired youth snapped his eyes open and began to shout back in retaliation. Wah, you scared me, the culprit who woke him up roared back even louder than him, then jumped up and down in surprise. Senior Wulian. You're awake. Cough, cough, cough. Perhaps because he shouted too loudly and strained his throat, the youth felt his throat was extremely dry, and even breathing felt like sandpaper scraping against it. Senior Wulian. Yeah. The guy in front of him, wearing a suit and holding a riot baton, looked to be in his 20s, but his eyes were as clear and bright as a small animal's, carrying a purity untainted by the world. That's you. A high-level employee of our branch. You. He seemed to remember something and bolted out of the room like a streak of lightning. His loud noise could still be heard faintly. Descartes, come quickly, Senior Wulian is alive. So, lively. The youth blinked slowly and raised a hand to pat his malfunctioning head. My name is Wulian. Alive. Was I dead before? Or in suspended animation? Is this scientific? It doesn't seem very scientific, does it? He squinted and thought for a long while, accepting the name, Wulian, based on a sense of familiarity. There's a lot of stuff in my head, but I can't seem to find anything about myself. Do I have amnesia? Senior. We're back. The junior, whose name remained unknown, blew in like a gust of wind, followed by a steady-paced, cold-faced girl also wearing a suit and holding a riot baton. This was likely the Descartes he mentioned. Here, senior, look, this is your profile. The reckless junior happily tossed over a few sheets of A4 paper, color-printed, no less. Name, Wulian Yassos. Gender, male. Age, 20, 17 plus 3. Affiliation, Lobotomy Corporation L1349 branch. Rank, level 5 employee. Stats, Fortitude 75, Prudence 106, Temperance 81, Justice 106. Salary, 5 million enkephalon per month. By the way, this story uses a conversion rate of 1 RMB equals 200 enkephalon. Fortitude is only 75. So I'm a glass cannon. Wait, what the hell is 17 plus 3? I started working at 17. Minors shouldn't be doing dangerous work, right? Oh, it's Lobotomy Corporation, never mind then. I should even praise it for being generous with the pay, thanks to his mysterious store of knowledge. Wulian naturally muttered and pointed at the profile in his hand, looking quite well adjusted. He leisurely flipped to the next page. Debt, 12 billion enkephalon 5% annual interest. Remarks. This employee previously signed relevant agreements, willing to accept potential debt in exchange for the company's unconditional rescue, using his restored labor capacity and himself as collateral. Therefore, Lobotomy Corporation used 5 HP bullets, 2.5 L of enkephalon, and a total of 3 years 1096 days of cryopod and supporting facilities for treatment when the employee was near death. Based on humanitarianism, the company waived the 76,720 enkephalon remainder of the treatment costs and set the interest rate at the lowest level to demonstrate Lobotomy Corporation's commitment to ensuring employee welfare. A certain someone whose welfare was ensured. Certain someone. How much? 12 months a year, 5m*12 equals 60m, 12 billion, 60m equals 200. He is 20 now. Great. He can retire at 220 years old. There is nothing great about this at all. He hasn't even calculated the annual interest yet. Even if he were chopped into fine mincemeat, he wouldn't sell for that much money. Plop. Wulian threw himself back into the cryopod. Senior, you, the nameless junior leaned over, just about to express his confusion, when his mouth was precisely grabbed by the hollow-eyed senior. Don't talk, don't make a noise, my posture coming out of the pod must have been wrong. Wulian's face was ashen. With one hand gripping someone's mouth, the other was placed elegantly on his lower abdomen, trying to make himself sleep more peacefully. Senior, the company has a bonus system. Descartes, who had been standing quietly aside, suddenly spoke up to remind him, you should probably let go of Gerda, he's about to cry. Even bonuses can't save me, 200 years. Wulian wailed miserably, though he did let go of poor Gerda. If it's the 9 abnormalities in our branch. Descartes' voice was calm, but to Wulian, it was filled with a provocative magic. Due to a lack of intelligence, we need an experienced senior to test the waters. For everyone whose information is fully filled, an additional bonus of 1.4 billion enkephalon will be awarded. 1.4 billion. 1.4 9 equals 12.6 greater than 12. It's the bonus. He's saved. He can even make a profit of 600 million. Retire, I want to retire. I'll retire after finishing this job. Wulian's face glowed with the light of hope. He flipped out of the cryopod decisively and coughed twice pretentiously. I have exited the pod and feel good. Where is my pension? No, where are those abnormalities? Right there. Gerda happily raised his hand to point the way, only to be hit hard by Descartes the next second. He looked at her with teary eyes, but received a gaze full of killing intent, forcing him to behave. Senior, you've just woken up, your working state might not have recovered yet. Descartes' tone was gentle, soft enough to drown someone. Perhaps you can interact with it first. It. Wulian nodded in agreement from the bottom of his heart and cautiously asked a question. The corners of Descartes' lips curled up slightly, the tutorial bunny. Open black lens bracket, the Outlander close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, he has become many people. He just wants to find himself. Close black lens bracket. Subject number, FO134. Risk level, Zion. Damage, 1 to 2 white. Max PE box output, 100. Work preference, cliff oath counter. This abnormality will not breach containment. Managerial guidelines, EGO gift, EGO weapon, EGO armor. ... Quote. Wow, such a severe lack of information. Luckily it's just a ZAYIN class with low attack. Wulian flipped through the employee handbook, only seeing a pitiful amount of unlocked information in the encyclopedia section. The late emperor had not yet completed his great undertaking before he passed away. No, not that one. The administration is harmonious and the people are at peace, and all neglected tasks are being undertaken. That's not right either. Gosh, I just want to complain that the entire branch doesn't even have a single piece of EGO. Even if this is a newly established department, it's unreasonable, right? Wulian tugged at his suit, which looked like it came from a street stall, and his riot baton made a dull thud as it hit the ground. Forget it, even if a worker is cursing in their heart, they have to keep a smile on their face. He took a deep breath and stepped into the containment room with the air of a hero going to his execution. Seemingly surprised that someone had entered, a young man wearing a deerstalker hat and a full beard stared blankly at the newcomer while holding half a meat pie. His slightly bulging cheeks moved subconsciously, clearly in the middle of enjoying his meal. Sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you, please continue. Wulian bowed and apologized decisively, turning to leave, only to find that the evil capitalist had already locked the heavy iron door. A room you can't leave without finishing work, get. It's okay sir, I was just a bit surprised. The man put away the meat pie, pushed up his gold-rimmed glasses, and his gentle brown eyes filled with a smile. "What are you doing here in my place? I haven't seen a living person in a long time. Housekeeping service." Wulian shook the broom and rag in his hand. "Please give a 5-star review, dear." "Hey now, asking for a review before the work is even done. That's a bit much." Open black lens bracket. The Outlander close black lens bracket laughed and scolded. "I haven't introduced myself yet. Hello, I am Sherlock Moriarty, a detective. Wulian Yassos, currently an indentured laborer." The poor thing spoke the truth with a shrug, then began briskly sweeping away the surrounding dust. "Work preference. Insight, extremely high. Hello there, I am Merlin Hermes, a wandering magician. Would you like to make a wish to me? They're quite effective, especially the third one." The performer, with a flamboyant pageboy cut and equally dazzling, ostentatious clothes, wore a delighted smile. He tossed his top hat, which was adorned with a bright tail feather, like a display of skill, showing a bit of a wicked sense of humor for teasing children. "Wow, so cool." Wulian blinked with sparkling star eyes, clapping enthusiastically from time to time and offering heartfelt praise. He was also quite a pro at humoring children. "Work preference. Attachment, extremely high. You brought me something delicious." The young man, with soft facial features and a bit of a belly, scratched his head sheepishly. "Then, thanks. My name is Joe Mingrui, just a coder." At first, Joe Mingrui acted very reserved. But after a few skewers and 2 cans of beer, he opened up quite a bit, complaining about the skewers, cooking, cursing the exploitative manager, mocking the clients who pretended to know everything, and gossiping about Wulian's salary and love life. By the time both were full and their bellies were round, Wulian even felt he and Joe Mingrui could be called friends. "Work preference. Instinct, extremely high. Faint gray mist drifted, though clearly thin, the face behind it remained obscured. "You may call me the Fool." The lofty and mysterious existence, seemingly residing at an infinite distance, spoke indifferently, without sorrow or joy, without illness or worry, like a deity. Repression. Wulian glanced at the riot baton in his hand. To be honest, this thing was no different from a fire poker. Suppressing his surging emotions and dismissing his inexplicable fear, Wulian, spurred by his massive debt, slowly raised the baton, preparing to deliver a soft, weak strike. But this was also a form of blasphemy. The moment the thought arose, Wulian felt as if his joints were covered in rust. Every movement was as stiff and sluggish as a puppet lacking lubrication. The next moment, his still free brain lost the ability to think, turning completely blank. He watched helplessly as the other's figure receded. No, it was he who was receding. The heavy doors could not pose any obstacle to him. After an unknown amount of time, Wulian, collapsed outside the containment unit, was splashed awake by Descartes with a cup of cold water. According to Goethe's description, his state at the time was only a few drops of drool away from being a true simpleton. Work preference. Repression, extremely low. Management guidelines. Please show him basic respect, especially when he faces you in the form of him. Speaking of which, I always feel like you're under some soft light filter, senior, Goethe said nonchalantly. Even your facial contours are a bit blurry. Really? Wulian scratched his head in confusion, looking left and right in the mirror, but seeing nothing. After staring for a long time, he threw down the mirror in frustration and turned to flop onto the soft sofa in the lounge, deciding that what the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve over. Faint, flickering gray-white mist swirled before him, and a deep red light flashed momentarily within his warm brown eyes. Open black lens bracket. The heart's angel close black lens bracket. Confide all your secrets to her. Remember to wish her happiness. Classification: 00166. Risk level: WAW. Damage: 5 to 7 white. Max PE box output: 50. Cliff oath counter limit: 3. The Outlander from before was scary enough, and that was only Zion class. I don't want to face a WAW. Wulian couldn't remember how many times he had screamed this. But, obviously, an indentured laborer has no human rights, and his objection was overruled. According to the description in the manual, this one seems to be a role similar to a psychiatrist. Taking a lesson from before, I must be polite. Polite, Wulian emphasized to himself in his heart as he strode into the containment unit. What met his eyes was an incredibly beautiful young girl. She wore a gorgeous yet not overly complex court dress. Her golden hair was brilliant but not blinding, and her green eyes were moist and shimmering. She stood gracefully 3 steps away, presenting the image of a well-bred, pampered noble lady from a wealthy family. It's a pleasure to meet you, beautiful lady. Wulian bowed slightly. He knew this pickup line was lame, but, but he really lacked the relevant vocabulary. Exalted, or dearest, would obviously be even weirder, right? Hello, sir. The girl lifted her skirt and performed an elegant court curtsy, the smile in her eyes so bright it was breathtaking. Don't be nervous, whether your greeting is novel or not won't change your sincere heart. Besides, your gentle temperament makes me feel as refreshed as a spring breeze. Oh my god. A direct hit from a pretty sister. I'm a goner. Wulian thought dizzily. Oh, how rude of me. The girl raised her feather fan with a hint of chagrin, gently covering her mouth and nose. Her jewel-like green eyes were full of charming innocence. I am Audrey Hall, the daughter of an earl. I am Wulian Yassos, an employee of the lobotomy branch. Speaking of which, sir, since you've come to my residence, have you seen others before? Existences like me. Audrey smiled, guiding Wulian's narration bit by bit until she had thoroughly excavated his already meager memories. I've really enjoyed chatting with you, she narrowed her eyes happily, a look of complete satisfaction on her face. Only, have I kept you from your rest? If there's nothing else you want to tell me, it would be more comfortable to get off work early. Poor Tom crossed out Wulian, toyed with by the abnormality. And the several attempts after that. Unremarkable. Work preference. Instinct. Normal. Insight. High. Attachment. Extremely high. Repression. Low. Management guidelines. 1. When the work result is good, the Cliff-Oath counter of open black lens bracket the Heart's Angel close black lens bracket will immediately decrease. 2. When the work result is normal, there is a small probability that the Cliff-Oath counter of open black lens bracket the Heart's Angel close black lens bracket will immediately decrease. 3. When the Cliff-Oath counter reaches 0, open black lens bracket the Heart's Angel close black lens bracket will breach containment, perform a wonderful court dance, and return on her own. During the dance, employees within the department's range will continuously recover SP. 4. If the Heart's Angel is attacked or noise is made during the dance, she will strike in dragon form and deal massive red damage, referring to slamming a 7-5 HP squishy until they're a fragile wreck with only 3 HP left. To the fool who disturbed her, Wulian. It's me, satisfied now. Wulian. Still me, satisfied now. After eliminating the threat, she will resume her dance. Although he was just a hair's breadth from being crushed into meat paste. Wulian, who had been brought back by the manager's healing bullet, lay slumped in the main lounge like a dried fish. As he felt his vitality slowly recover and fill him, the dejection of being hated by Miss Audrey wound around his heart. Miss Audrey is such a good person, so gentle, beautiful, and understanding. I actually disturbed her dancing. The more Wulian thought about it, the sadder he became. Even though he didn't regret his choice, the little person in his heart began biting a handkerchief and weeping. Senior. Descartes, surprised voice rang out. You got the EGO gift from 001-66. EGO gift. Wulian perked up a bit and sat up with a kip up, feeling the top of his head and patting his chest and stomach, seriously searching for traces of the gift. He hadn't seen a fresh EGO gift before. On your back, Descartes kindly reminded him, poking the flexible wing membrane. An unfamiliar sensation arrived unexpectedly. Wulian instinctively shrank his neck, but the single dragon wing on the right side of his back seemed to receive some command and unfurled aggressively. Its wingspan was over 2 meters, enough to wrap completely around Wulian's thin frame. The dragon wing was a beautiful white gold, the skeleton was sturdy, and the membrane was translucent, with intricate blood vessels interwoven, carrying a somewhat inhuman beauty. Who hasn't dreamed of having the wings of a colorful phoenix? Even with only one wing, Wulian was already very happy. Miss Audrey is truly a wonderful person. To be continued. Side Story 5, Waking Up, the bystander me actually became a genius employee, Part 2. Crack. Gavel strikes. Last time on our story, Wulian, burdened with tens of billions in debt, was forced to work for Lobotomy Corporation. To retire early, he bravely faced the 2 abnormalities, open black lens bracket the Outlander close black lens bracket and open black lens bracket the Heart's Angel close black lens bracket, and after getting beaten twice, achieved decent results. What happens next? Swish, asterisk, folding fan opens, let's see. Open black lens bracket the Apocalypse Singer close black lens bracket. We tried to equip employees who came into contact with him with earplugs, clearly, the attempt failed. Serial number, 001320. Level, Teth. Damage, 2 to 4 white. Max PE box production, 50. Cliff-Oath counter limit, 4. This abnormality will not breach containment. I'm so lucky, Wulian thought to himself. Inside the containment unit, a middle-aged man with sharp features and a head of blue seaweed-like hair seemed to be resting. Although his snoring wasn't pleasant, it was surely better than the singing he was famous for. Wulian tiptoed over to open black lens bracket the apocalypse singer close black lens bracket, wondering what he should do with this opportunity, putting aside instinct and attachment, should he quietly clean up? Or take advantage of the situation and throw a sack over him for a beating? While he was lost in thought, oblivious to his surroundings, the rhythmic, tide-like snoring suddenly paused suspiciously. Then it resumed, sounding exactly the same as before. I'll start with cleaning. Easy things first. Wulian pumped himself up, picked up his prepared tools, and began working diligently. Phew. Finally finished. Ghost. What's it like when you've just relaxed and are ready to clock out, only to find a pair of eerie, blue, inscrutable eyes stuck to you like a ghost, impossible to shake off or escape? Student Wulian, who was screaming and blurring from fright, had a lot to say. Wait, it can't pass censorship. Then there's nothing more to say. Ghost. No, no, no. The middle-aged man flashed a trustworthy smile, his voice steady and powerful. Don't be alarmed, sir. I believe in an orthodox deity who does not easily harm others, especially his believers. I'm not anyone's believer, unless you believe in Marx. Wulian clutched his racing heart, speechless, but his mind sharply retorted, hello, sir. I'm Wulian, how should I call you? Alger Wilson, the other responded. His smile was bright, but his eyes were deep, as if weighing something. Few people come here. Having already studied under open black lens bracket the Heart's Angel close black lens bracket, Wulian secretly heightened his guard. Wasn't this Miss Audrey's conversational trap mode? He wouldn't fall for it again. He fell for it. Are there really this many old foxes in the world? How did a completely unrelated topic naturally transition there? By the time Wulian realized he was being played, he had already blurted out almost everything he should and shouldn't have. Could this be the average level for this type of abnormality? Were Miss Audrey and Mr. Alger's negotiation skills just ordinary among these humanoid sapient entities? Wulian was secretly alarmed, feeling he couldn't let himself degenerate like this. He had to add a course to his future retirement life, call it, the art of language. The art of reading people, or a social maneuvering, would work too. Seemingly feeling that teasing a precious source of information wasn't appropriate, Alger finally reined in his calculating expression and showed some sincerity. We've talked for so long, you must be tired. How about, I sing a song for you? Vile hand bringing winter, doctor. I'm already heartbroken, and you're telling me you're going to keep killing. No thanks at all. I feel much worse. Wulian was indignant. Wulian forced a smile. Wulian, gladly, accepted and expressed anticipation. Ahem. Alger cleared his throat with great flair. Break, break, break. On thy cold grey stones, O sea. Break, break, break. At the foot of thy crags, O sea. Crashing. High-pitched, distorted noise with a heavy metal texture shook the solid walls and struck the eardrums of the living. It intensified in ripples of acoustic vibration, finally swallowing the listener's sanity with a face-changing, stubborn, and terrifying power. Ma, na, jeer, don't, listen, song, hard, here. Struggling to scrawl a few lines in his notebook, Wulian's body fell with a thud, and he enjoyed a baby-like sleep. After crossing the river by feeling the stones a few more times, meaning getting hit in the head by stones repeatedly, Wulian finally finished summarizing the intel on open black lens bracket the apocalypse singer close black lens bracket. Work preferences. Instinct, common. Insight, common. Attachment, high. Repression, low. Managerial guidelines. 1. Do not chat with open black lens bracket the apocalypse singer close black lens bracket during feeding, cleaning, fighting. If you have a back-and-forth conversation, congratulations, your work type will change to attachment. If you get along famously, congratulations, your work result is good. He will definitely sing a song for you. 2. Listening to open black lens bracket the apocalypse singer close black lens bracket, singing only causes minor white damage, but listeners will fall into a coma crossed out deep sleep in a very short time, requiring the manager to wake them up. 3. If the employee is still asleep after 40s, open black lens bracket the apocalypse singer close black lens bracket, cliff oath counter will enter a cycle of decreasing by 1 point every 20s until it reaches 0, and the entire department is immersed in his singing. 4. The headwear, rock, gifted by open black lens bracket the apocalypse singer close black lens bracket is currently the only known means to resist his singing. Unfortunately, the way to obtain this gift seems to be getting sung into a faint by open black lens bracket the apocalypse singer close black lens bracket more than 3 times, which is not very practical. What? You're asking why Wulian knows this so well. Guess who's wearing that headphone-like accessory called rock? Open black lens bracket the light chaser close black lens bracket. It's not that he can't endure the darkness, but you'd better pray you aren't the only light. Serial number 001419. Level HE. Damage 3 to 5 red. Max PE box production 50. Cliff oath counter limit 1. Quote. Be cautious, watch out for conversational traps, abnormalities are all old schemers. Wulian muttered to remind himself, glancing at the employee handbook again. Darkness and light, huh? He thought for a moment, then went to the supply room to get a flashlight. Pushing open the door to the containment unit, the interior was beyond Wulian's expectation. It was pitch black without a single ray of light. To better monitor an abnormality's status, containment units were usually brighter than the employee areas. Strange, was it a management requirement? No, he'd only unlocked the basic info. Under the pressure of the iron door closing, Wulian took a few quick steps into the darkness. The only light on him was the tiny, flickering indicator on his walkie-talkie. Dead silence enveloped the space. A cold wind seemed to brush against his skin. An inorganic chill triggered bouts of shivering, followed by an inexplicable sense of crisis, as if he were being targeted by some large predator, ready to be torn into bloody shreds by claws at any moment. Wulian gently gripped the flashlight. Then, the moment he turned it on, he threw it away. Sounds of pouncing, slashing, pounding, and whimpers and roars from nowhere, all occurred 2 meters away in an instant. If Wulian hadn't reacted in time, he might have become part of that debris. Amidst the chaos, he covered the indicator light and spoke in a low voice. Manager, please restore lighting to open black lens bracket the light chaser close black lens bracket, S containment unit immediately. Repeat, please restore lighting to open black lens bracket the light chaser close black lens bracket, S containment unit immediately. Even the faintest light was still light. Confirming his request was sent, Wulian decisively tossed the walkie-talkie away, calmly watching it be crushed by the unknown presence, only slowly tightening his grip on a corner of his suit. No light source remained on him. He found a corner near the door and sat quietly, waiting for his unscrupulous and mindless boss's next move. The sounds of a monster's panting and swallowing seemed to buzz in his ears. But when the light arrived, all horrors melted away like the first snow. Wulian squinted uncomfortably, raising his hand to block the overly blinding light. Not far from him, a tall young man in strange attire dropped the battle axe in his hand and stood blankly, bathed in the bright light. Even though the strong light brought tears to his eyes, he stared fixedly at the light, unwilling to look away for even a moment. Open black lens bracket the light chaser close black lens bracket. Wulian sighed silently. Perhaps a long time passed, or perhaps it was just a moment, before the fellow before him withdrew his gaze and spoke with joy and gratitude. Thank you, sir. I'm Wulian. How should I call you? Wulian stood up, looking at the young man who was like a small giant. Damn, he's tall. Derek Berg. The other stepped forward happily, casting a massive shadow over Wulian. Thank you so much, sir. In our city of silver, pure darkness breeds fear and attracts monsters, only light can defeat them. I've always wanted to become light, to become the sun. Phrases like, be cautious, be careful, and, abnormalities are all masters of conversational traps, were still buzzing in Wulian's head out of habit, but he slapped them away, smashing them into the wall so hard they couldn't be pried out. Is this right? It should be, right. Wulian liked this big friend a little. He had a massive build, but his psychological age was still quite immature. According to him, he lived in a place with extremely scarce resources, where food was monotonous and the atmosphere oppressive. Every member was destined from birth to bear the responsibility of maintaining the community. Aside from the fact that the monster in the darkness was himself, in all other respects, Derek was clearly just a pure, simple, and responsible young lad. What truly made Wulian lower his guard was probably Derek's attitude toward food. Whether it was eggs and beef or bread and potatoes, he treated them with a sense of treasure and even reverence. Even if abnormalities didn't have hunger, Derek still ate seriously during every instinct work session, consuming as much as possible to face whatever tomorrow might bring. Someone who eats well can't be all that bad. Right. Work preferences. Instinct. Very high. Insight. Common. Attachment. Common. Repression. Low. Managerial guidelines. 1. Ensure open black lens bracket the light chaser close black lens bracket, S containment unit has sufficient light. In this situation, open black lens bracket the light chaser close black lens bracket is peaceful, easy to talk to, and will not actively show aggressive intent. 2. When open black lens bracket the light chaser close black lens bracket, S containment unit falls into darkness, he will transform into an unknown creature and shred all light sources in the unit. In this situation, stay away from all glowing objects. If you cannot get rid of glowing items or are a light source yourself, you'd better pray the manager turns the lights on fast enough. 3. Even after crushing multiple light sources, experiencing strong emotional fluctuations, and returning to darkness, open black lens bracket the light chaser close black lens bracket, cliff oath counter never decreased. It is speculated, only speculated, that if the transformed open black lens bracket the light chaser close black lens bracket successfully kills an employee working on him, he will become light, in a distorted way and breach containment. 4. The chest accessory, meaning of existence, gifted by open black lens bracket the light chaser close black lens bracket does not become a light source that attracts aggro, but employees wearing it will still be attacked by the transformed creature if they hold other light sources. Walking out of the containment unit door, Wulian's head hung slightly, as if he hadn't quite recovered. This was probably the first time he had been so close to death. Not being killed by massive damage, he almost achieved that achievement when facing open black lens bracket the Heart's Angel close black lens bracket. But rather the threat of death that is impossible to escape after violating a taboo, that is, a mechanic kill. Relax, you'll get used to it. Lobotomy is like this, he said to himself, nodding solemnly. Forget it, forget it. Since he owed such a huge sum of money, he deserved it, okay. But being forced into high-risk experiments like a guinea pig still felt a bit unpleasant. Wulian was expressionless, slowly rubbing the shiny iron badge on his chest. He flicked his eyelids, his gaze sharp as if hiding razor blades, trying to send a warm greeting to the manager through the cameras scattered along the hallway. Retirement plan progress, 4/9. Open black lens bracket the Lost Writer close black lens bracket. Shish, do not disturb or wandering. Serial number, 001413. Level, Teth. Damage, 2 to 4 white. Max PE box production, 50. Cliff oath counter limit, 4. Open the door. Wulian looked down at the lady lazily slumped on the soft sofa, walked quietly to her side, and added a few pieces of charcoal to the fireplace. Thanks. With her brown hair in disarray, open black lens bracket the Lost Writer close black lens bracket covered her mouth and gave a long yawn, her voice noticeably nasal. I'm Furs Wall, you aren't here to nag me for a draft, are you? No. The high-intensity work made Wulian show a hint of fatigue. He didn't disturb Furs, but sat on the floor, leaning most of his weight against the side of the sofa. I'm Wulian, a lobotomy employee. For the next while, neither spoke, letting the burning charcoal make light, crackling sounds. A somewhat heavy warmth accumulated in the air. Miss Furs, do you drink coffee? Wulian suddenly asked, as if just remembering his task was to work, not to keep company. Phew, sure, remember to add a few sugar cubes, it would be even better if there were some desserts. Desserts? He had indeed prepared some. Wulian let out a long breath and stood up shakily like a donkey at a mill. He walked to the door, used a pre-prepared small coffee machine to filter a decent cup of coffee, and tore open the packaging of some scones, arranging them neatly on a small plate. Sophisticated. Furs gave him a firm thumbs up. Got any cigarettes? Regardless of the reason, anyway, the way this lady named Furs looked at him became increasingly kind. Probably, not a bad thing. Strangely, Wulian worked at The Lost Writer several times. Results of good, normal, and bad all occurred, yet her cliff oath counter remained at 2 feet. When was it triggered before? What's going on now? What exactly are the conditions for reducing the count? Senior, come help. As Wulian fell into thought, Descartes floated by at the right time. Goethe was beaten up by FO1-34. The Outlander. Wulian exclaimed in surprise. He didn't perform oppression work, did he? Instinct. Descartes quickly covered his face. Anyway, please go comfort him. So Wulian went in and out for the 5th, 6th, and 7th time, finally refreshing German Sparrow beating up Goethe on the 8th time, and learned the reason why his idiot colleague got hit. What do you mean he treated you to canned herring while he ate steak? What do you mean he thought you couldn't speak, reported to the manager to add a meal, and then gave you a handful of basil while he ate pasta? What do you mean you threatened him with a revolver and he thought you wanted to play Russian roulette and told you to shoot yourself first? Wulian was shocked, Wulian was petrified, Wulian broke apart bit by bit. German is maintaining his persona, not practicing self-cultivation, and certainly not playing dead. Hey. Did I write the managerial guidelines for nothing? Give me the most basic respect for the abnormality. After finally calming down the Outlander, Wulian walked out of the containment unit in a daze. Walking towards him was the lost writer, equally absent-minded and swaying. Wulian rubbed his eyes and patted his head, trying to restart his brain. Restart failed. Someone, quick, do something. The lost writer has breached containment. Where's the manager? Where are the senior employees? Ah, am I a senior employee? Then that's still a big problem. Wulian took a deep breath and looked up at his HP and MP bars. Very healthy. I can mess around. New managerial guidelines, here I come. Just as he approached the wandering furs and was prepared for a planned death-seeking attempt, the walkie-talkie, which had a lethally thin presence and never signaled anything good when it spoke, actually started working. LW1122-33, stop probing. What's that gibberish? Wulian recalled and found that this string of numbers seemed to be his ID. Oh ho, concerned about his life. Does the wicked manager actually have moments where his conscience isn't completely gone? Wulian wasn't some rebellious youth. He immediately followed the advice, turned around, and went back to rest. Of course, there was a small regret. Wearing the key pendant gifted by the lost writer, in a short distance of only 50 meters, he got lost 3 times. He wants a refund. A refund. ... Work preferences. Instinct. High. Insight. High. Attachment. Common. Oppression. Common. Managerial guidelines. 1. When there are no employees in the lost writer's containment unit, if an employee enters another abnormality's containment unit, there is a high probability that the lost writer's cliff oath counter will immediately decrease. 2. When the lost writer's cliff oath counter reaches 0, the lost writer will fly out of the containment unit and begin wandering. After wandering for 15 minutes, the lost writer will return to the containment unit on her own. I kept a bit of the verb so you know I'm referencing the punishing bird. 3. If you find the lost writer somewhere other than the containment unit, please keep quiet and do not disturb her wandering. I don't know the specific reason, go talk to my manager. Open black lens bracket. The puppeteer close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Warm blood, cold dolls, you must eventually become one of them. Close black lens bracket. ID, 00193. Risk level, HE. Damage, 2 to 4 black. Max PE box output, 50. Cliff oath counter limit. This abnormality does not breach containment. ... Wulian quietly watched the containment room door open, lifted his foot to step, and didn't step in. Sir, please put away the doll's clothes, I'm coming into work. He cupped his hands like a megaphone and shouted to the shut-in inside who was obsessed with playing with dolls. Ah, okay. The other party realized the seriousness of the problem the moment he looked at Wulian, and hurriedly set down the doll in his hand with gentle movements, skillfully bypassing several dolls and the floor full of treasures, and gathered up the gorgeous and complex dresses piled at the door. Seeing that the puppeteer had finished tidying up, Wulian then carefully walked into the containment unit. Looking at those exquisite dolls, some the size of a palm and some as tall as a person, a clear expression of amazement and envy showed in his eyes. The degree was just right, not enough to be offensive. The puppeteer's chin rose slightly, almost imperceptibly. Let me introduce myself, I'm Wulian, a lobotomy employee. I am Emmeline White, a sanguine, a true sanguine. Emphasizing it again. Sir, you're quite proud of your sanguine status. Wulian's eyes curved, roughly understanding how to soothe him. Wait, do bats have fur? It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Sanguine. Your collection is truly breathtaking. I rarely get to see such beautiful and exquisite existences. Wulian praised sincerely, and subtly shifted the object of flattery from the dolls to the gentleman in front of him. You must truly love them to have such unique aesthetic taste, right? Of course. Exquisite and beautiful dolls, and beautiful, pure young girls, these two are my favorites. As soon as Emmeline mentioned this topic, his eyes began to shine, and he shared his unique experience of being immersed in the doll circle for a long time like a machine gun. Which craftsman's skills were superb, which skeleton had the best mobility, which accessories were expensive but exquisite and realistic. He talked to himself, but Wulian's thoughts stalled slightly, recalling the introduction about the puppeteer. Warm blood and cold dolls. Pardon me for asking, sir. He waited patiently for Emmeline to finish talking about his preferences for doll types, and took the opportunity to ask while he was catching his breath, when you face a girl you like, do you see her as an individual life to be appreciated? A living blood bag? Or, doll material? This question seemed to be outside the expectations of the sanguine gentleman. His blood-red eyes were filled with confusion, and his look at Wulian was quite strange, with a bit of inexplicable superiority. Which sane person would confuse a young girl with a doll? And, a blood bag. I do crave the blood of beautiful girls, but it's best if it's voluntary. Or unconscious. At least it can't be coerced. Emmeline curled his lip, stared at Wulian for a while as if thinking of something, and his language was terrifyingly direct. Are you worried that if I meet a girl I like, I'll make a move on her? Strange, why did I subconsciously feel that the puppeteer was a bit dim-witted and shouldn't have noticed this? Wulian thought in confusion, not forgetting to respond to Emmeline's question. Sorry, I was judging a sanguine's heart with my own narrow mind. I have a colleague who might fit the criteria of a young girl, so I indeed had concerns in that regard. Hey, Emmeline sneered. Then you can rest assured. I'm not the kind of idiot whose brain is clouded by appetite, nor will I see a living girl as a cold doll in waiting. Don't you think this concept is very strange, even wicked? Wulian assumed a posture of listening respectfully. I've designed unique personalities and stories for all my dolls. If they became girls and didn't match my preset personality, I would be extremely disappointed. If it's a doll made from a girl, knowing she has her own life experiences, how would I give her a new setting and continue writing her story? It's simply boring. Speaking of this, Emmeline seemed to not have had his fill. What two things do you like most? Living, and retirement. Emmeline was choked by Wulian's answer. Things. I mean things. The state of being alive, and a retirement permit. Or maybe add a pension. Forget it. Emmeline gave up struggling. I asked a friend the same question before. His answer was, money and food. For me, seeing dolls and girls as the same thing is like a stack of edible gold pounds. You should understand now, right? Wulian nodded seriously. Living is great, and retirement is great, but living equals retirement, or retirement equals living, is just weird. Speaking of which, even though he's also HE level, Mr. Emmeline is still very friendly. Much safer than the light chaser. Wulian thought so. Having tried each work type one by one, Emmeline was indeed a friendly, gentle, and easy to manage good person. No, good sanguine. Instinct work okay. Although this sanguine gentleman would criticize the quality of the blood, especially disliking the blood of the elderly and the sick, Wulian felt his appraisal ability could definitely land him a job at a hospital's blood testing department. He only talked about it and wouldn't actually have any substantial picky eating behavior. Attachment work okay. As long as you avoid the word vampire, and don't offend his status and hobbies in your speech, Emmeline is still very easy to coax. Oppression work okay. Unlike the Lost Writer's style of running away first, Mr. Emmeline was actually quite accepting of being beaten, as long as you told him beforehand that it was a trial, a duel to improve his strength, and then poured a bunch of, when heaven is about to place a great responsibility on a man, chicken soup, he could shout, one more time, after the beating. Insight work. Oh no. After obtaining Emmeline's consent, Wulian prepared a clean soft cloth and a dense brush, and also carried a small air blower, preparing to perform a simple cleaning of the dolls throughout the containment unit. He came to a girl doll that was almost as tall as him, wearing a gorgeous long dress. She had blonde hair and red eyes, was delicate and beautiful, and under her slightly trembling eyelashes were flowing eyes. She was truly lifelike. Wulian carefully brushed away the almost non-existent dust. The movement brought a breeze, stirring a few strands of the doll's hair. Wulian used the air blower to clean the fine dust in the joints. In the squeak squeak sound of the airflow, the crisp sound of joints moving was mixed in. Wulian picked up the soft cloth, dipped it in some maintenance essential oil, and applied it thinly and evenly to the doll's delicate cheeks. The touch under the soft cloth was slightly cool, but it was as smooth and soft as silk, denting slightly with his movements. Is this really a doll? Or, a girl's soft and sorrowful sigh sounded in his ear. Will you be the knight I've been waiting for? The beautiful girl stared blankly at Wulian, her eyes filled with the dependence of a tired bird returning to its nest. Or, would you like to stay with me for a little while? Really just a little while. Talk to me, at least listen to me read a short poem, please. The girl's posture was very low, matching her noble and elegant temperament, her slightly raised neck and watery eyes. She was like a precious breed of cat, making one involuntarily feel pity and find it hard to refuse. Not to mention this sorrowful tone, the light in Wulian's eyes dimmed bit by bit, as if he had already knelt on one knee beside the girl in the posture of a knight, sharing that dilapidated manner with her, dancing in the lonely garden, and embracing before the downcast stars. Promise her, the wonderful scene before you is about to unfold. Something was tempting him to speak. Those crimson eyes suppressed bloodlust and excitement. Quickly, enter the game, my knight. The warm brown eyes were stained with gray, and the vivid, fiery soul seemed to have been poured with a layer of wax, tightening and twisting as the liquid solidified, about to become another dignified statue. So that's how it is. I think 800 grit soft cloth should be paired with number 42 concrete, so the shield breaking opportunity will be very happy. and you can drive a postman's mask to sell hot pot base, and deliver the best duck blood soup to sanguines all over the world. Wulian said thoughtfully, a strange light shining in his eyes. As if completely unaware of the doll's abnormality, he silently slipped away a bit. Just as he turned around, he was smacked on the head by his own peeking left wing. Wulian. He slowly paced out of the containment room holding that new wing, which was as dark as night, and started running the moment he stepped out the door. His left and right wings fluttered with their own ideas, carrying Wulian's body jumping left and right, and together with his wildly kicking legs, he went back to the break room with a clatter and a bang, doing front flips, back flips, and mid-air turns like Panjo Dan. Mom, I'm alive. ... Work preferences. Instinct. High. Insight. Very low. Attachment. High. Oppression. High. Managerial guidelines. 1. The puppeteer is a noble sanguine. 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 Not a vampire. 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 As long as you don't mention those 3 words and don't disparage his hobbies, he'll be as easy to fool crossed out get along with as a teenager in his 8th grade syndrome phase. 2. No insight, no insight, no insight. Especially do not touch those dolls. They are ashes. 3. If you unfortunately face a living doll, do not believe her. Ignore her. Do not respond. Do not respond. Do not respond. You won't like the consequences, I promise. 4. Hee OVO, are you looking at me? Opening parenthesis. Confirmed by subsequent psychological assessment, the 4th managerial guideline was a prank by LW1122-33 and can be ignored. The employee has been suspended without pay. X. To be continued. Extra 5. Waking up, I, a bystander, actually became a genius employee. Part 2. Beep. Clock in successful. Welcome back. Open black lens bracket the silent reader close black lens bracket. Knowledge pursues man. Code 00123. Level Teth. Damage 1 to 3 white. Max PE box output 50. Cliff oath counter limit 4. This abnormality will not breach containment. Quote. Manager. 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 Wulian picked the most pleasing camera in the hallway and squatted on the ground in front of it, drawing circles with exaggerated motions. Manager, I curse you to be single. I curse you to lose your hair. I curse you with tenosynovitis. I curse you with old cold legs. I curse you with a herniated lumbar disc. I curse you with myopia, hyperopia, astigmatism, and strabismus. Ah. His salary is innocent. Retirement. I must retire. I can't stay in this crappy company anymore. Wulian tapped his newly issued walkie-talkie as if to vent his anger, but unfortunately, it was all bark and no bite. The walkie-talkie remained unharmed, and X's cold command still came through clearly. LW1122-33, enter 00123's containment unit. Yes, sir, the youth gritted his teeth inwardly, but he could only yield to his superior's tyranny and obediently act as a proactive little guinea pig. After comforting himself with increasing proficiency, Wulian took a deep breath and stepped through that unoriginal door. What was going on? Wulian looked at the painfully writhing humanoid creature before him and subconsciously took a few steps back, his back pressing against the cold iron door, sending a slight shiver through him. It seemed to be a woman. The reason he used the word seemed was because the other party's current appearance was far from that of a normal human. Her exposed skin was cracked everywhere, with dense bloodstains healing and then breaking apart again, revealing indifferent, meaningless eyeballs at the dermis layer. Her ears were stretched and expanded into eerie trumpet shapes, and they continued to sprout raised granulations insatiably, as if trying to win some victory through sheer numbers. That humanoid creature was roaring and wailing, her fingertips clawing fiercely at the hard floor, only able to smear streaks of blood upon it. For the first time, Wulian wished his eyesight were worse, at least so he wouldn't have to see the fingernails and shredded flesh mixed in that blood. Fear, pity, disgust, sorrow. Wulian once tried to define the emotion welling up in his heart. But it wasn't necessary now, he thought. With no way to retreat, the employee gripped the fire poker in his hand and silently accepted the baptism of that indifferent gaze from above open black lens bracket the silent reader close black lens bracket, allowing those cold, ruthless, lashless eyes to swallow all of his sanity. He couldn't be Don Quixote, he couldn't even look directly at that windmill. As for what happened later, Wulian couldn't quite remember. It seemed like some existence was chasing him and stuffing a bunch of useful and useless knowledge into him, to the point where his 256G brain completely froze into a sea of garbled code, and even his language and thoughts were almost cleared out as trash. In short, no one rescued him from the containment unit. He was left alone by Ms. Open Black Lens Bracket the Silent Reader Close Black Lens Bracket, forgive his brain for being a mess, for half a day. He held on until he successfully deleted British recipes, German jokes, American history, postpartum care for sows, a guide for roosters laying eggs, and other random things. Only then did he have the soil for sanity to survive. He is the hidden sage. Ms. Open Black Lens Bracket the Silent Reader Close Black Lens Bracket glanced at the dazed Wulian, as if guessing what he wanted to ask. I am Katlia. You look better. Wulian nodded, his tone still drifting. He rubbed his own skin, suddenly wondering if it had also opened up to reveal blood-clotted eyeballs underneath. The feeling of facing the hidden sage was similar to facing Mr. the Fool. That sense of powerlessness and being at someone's mercy was practically the same. No, Mr. the Fool is different, why would he think that? But, what's the difference? He couldn't explain it. Had he gone stupid? Wulian clutched his head, which still felt a lingering throbbing pain and a sense of tearing, and squatted dejectedly by the wall. His two large wings wrapped tightly around him, making him look like a triangular zongzi bound hard with cotton thread. The triangular zongzi lifted its head, he seemed to have been poked by someone. It was Katlia. After emerging from her abnormal state, this lady had maintained a rational and reliable image, and, to be honest, Wulian always felt she had the aura of a study representative, making people both respect and fear her, as if she would ask if you'd finished your homework in the next second. Noticing Wulian's reaction, Katlia met his gaze seriously and intently, seemingly trying to study something from his empty eyes. You are not a mystery prior, nor are you of any other high spirituality pathway. By all logic, you shouldn't be able to see him. The hidden sage. Wulian narrowed his eyes, unable to find anything useful from his mere few days of memory. You shouldn't see this much. Katlia's tone shifted from questioning to certain, if it weren't for. Forget it, take this. She handed over a pair of gold-rimmed glasses as thick as the bottom of a bottle, seemingly the same style as the pair on her own nose. It won't block your vision, but it can effectively isolate your prying into certain existences. Trust me, this can save your life. Thank you. Wulian accepted the gift, feeling for some reason that this was like sharing survival tips between fellow sufferers. Is there anything you'd like to eat? Oh, you mean work preference. Katlia lowered her glasses slightly, her deep purple, almost black eyes peering over the lenses, staring fixedly at the slightly stiff Wulian. Don't worry, it's not mind reading, I just happened to acquire the corresponding knowledge. Taking the small notebook Wulian held in his hand, Katlia personally filled out the management information for Open Black Lens Bracket the Silent Reader Close Black Lens Bracket. Work preferences. Instinct, common. Insight, common. Attachment, common. Repression, low. Management guidelines. 1. When there are no employees in Open Black Lens Bracket the Silent Reader Close Black Lens Bracket, S Containment Unit, Open Black Lens Bracket the Silent Reader Close Black Lens Bracket, S Cliff Oath counter will immediately decrease for every abnormality work completed. After any work is completed on Open Black Lens Bracket the Silent Reader Close Black Lens Bracket, her Cliff Oath counter will immediately increase by 1. 2. When Open Black Lens Bracket the Silent Reader Close Black Lens Bracket, S Cliff Oath counter reaches 0, an invisible existence will appear in the containment unit, that is, knowledge, itself. 3. When knowledge appears, he will entwine with Open Black Lens Bracket the Silent Reader Close Black Lens Bracket, S main body and pursue any employee who enters the containment unit. 4. Once knowledge successfully catches an employee, that employee will be rendered immobile and continuously suffer white mental damage until knowledge leaves. 5. If an employee sees knowledge itself, it is sincerely hoped that your company has a complete funeral system. Of course, one can also pray for the protection of a deity. Open Black Lens Bracket the Dark Knight Poet Close Black Lens Bracket. If poetry cannot bring you peace, then, I wish you sweet dreams. Code 001214. Level WAW. Damage 4 to 7 black. Max PE box output 50. Cliff Oath counter limit 4. It was already 2 days later by the time he had completely recovered from the accident with Open Black Lens Bracket the Silent Reader Close Black Lens Bracket. Perhaps out of a guilty conscience, X eventually restored Wulian's salary and benefits, and even gave him half a day of rest. Reunited with his salary, Wulian suddenly felt the manager wasn't a bad person after all. He didn't deserve curses like hair loss, tenosynovitis, or old cold legs. Wait, how did he get himself gaslighted? This is just using his own salary as a reward. Unscrupulous company. Unscrupulous manager. The will to retire surged in Wulian's heart, filling him with determination. Walking into the containment unit, the furnishings inside were very much like a poet's residence. A vertical bookshelf stuffed with poetry collections, a desk piled messily with manuscript papers, a simple yet exceptionally soft bean-bag chair in the corner, and a handsome man with dark hair and green eyes, looking unkempt and possessing a casual temperament. "Good afternoon, sir." Open black lens bracket. The Dark Knight Poet close black lens bracket looked over with a bright smile, his tourmaline-like eyes as brilliant as stars. "Your arrival pleases me, just like dreaming of the captain. Mr. Poet, you've grown. You've actually learned writing techniques other than direct expression." Wulian curled the corners of his mouth slightly, then quickly composed his expression again. "Good afternoon, sir. I am Wulian, an employee here. Leonard Mitchell." The other's gaze lingered on Wulian for a brief moment before quickly turning back to the manuscript paper on the desk, seemingly preparing to continue polishing his verses. Seeing that Leonard appeared not to want to be disturbed, Wulian naturally wouldn't make himself a nuisance. He walked lightly to the side, intending to be like the field snail maiden, sweeping the floor and making food, striving to earn his second-to-last retirement fund as soon as possible. Right then, Leonard's voice abruptly rang out in the containment room. "Have you seen Klein?" Mr. Klein Moretti. "I have," Wulian responded without thinking. He vaguely felt something was wrong with this state, yet he couldn't break free. In the tiny bit of time he spent pondering, even the thought of noticing something abnormal was silently erased. "How is he? I mean, is he okay?" Leonard set down the round-bellied fountain pen and looked up at Wulian's position, only his green eyes were tightly closed at this moment, as if he were drowning in that boundless dreamscape. "Maybe okay. I met Mr. Moretti during my 5th work session. At the time, he was studying a theater ticket stub and even asked me if I could find a videotape of the relevant play." As Wulian recounted, that memory also played out beside him like a recording. This scene was clearly not scientific at all, but Wulian had no time to care, deeply mired in the swamp of the dream, laying out phrases named Klein, under Leonard's guidance. Until he could find no more words. "Is the Klein before you, like this?" Before the dream shattered, Wulian heard the gentleman opposite him murmur softly, ending with a sigh. "I am too far from him." Having seemingly found what he wanted in the previous exchange, Leonard was extremely cooperative with Wulian's work thereafter. It could even be called indulgent. In order to explore replicable experiences for other employees, Wulian actually had to put in some extra effort. But then, when Wulian discussed poetry with Leonard, the poet clearly showed great interest. It wasn't the joy of meeting a kindred spirit, but more like the hope of fulfilling a certain entrustment. Student poet was studying poetry very seriously. Wulian realized this with absolute clarity. To be honest, Wulian wasn't some literary master, let alone possessing any talent for phrasing, but in his view, the poetry under Leonard's pen had already taken shape. After completing another work session, Wulian bid Leonard a cheerful farewell and walked out of the containment room feeling entirely relaxed. His steps were light, and the airflow he created turned into a wind that licked over a page of messily written poetry. To Klein Moretti. How should I describe you? A gentleman in a formal suit, gentle and refined. Who would also frown, poking at the hated turnips on the plate. The clock for off-work echoes, you hum a song and head home. How should I mourn you? A guardian who faced danger and moved forward resolutely. Also a poor soul written in ink, caught in a conspiracy. Handfuls of soil sprinkled down, you silently blurred away. How should I pursue you? An adventurer of great fame, traversing the 5 seas. Also an ancient, mysterious wealthy merchant devoted to charity. Doves flap their wings and fly past, you take off the hand puppet and vanish. How should I remember you? I look at the moon you once saw. I walk the path you once walked. Hearing passers-by talk about the great adventurer's stories. Is that you? Or is that not the complete you? I seem unable to explain everything about you. I only know you are Klein Moretti. Work preferences. Instinct. Common. Insight. Common. Attachment. High. Repression. Common. Management guidelines. 1. If any abnormality other than open black lens bracket the Outlander close black lens bracket breaches containment, open black lens bracket the Dark Knight Poet close black lens bracket can be commissioned to deal with it. However, the commission requires a certain amount of energy as a fee. 2. When an employee who has interacted with the Outlander completes work on the Dark Knight Poet, the cliff oath counter of the Dark Knight Poet will decrease after the countdown ends. 3. Whenever an abnormality breaches containment, the cliff oath counter of the Dark Knight Poet will immediately decrease. 4. When the work result for the Dark Knight Poet is good, its cliff oath counter will immediately increase, up to a maximum of 3 points. 5. After breaching containment, the Dark Knight Poet will transform into an 8-legged demonic wolf and rush toward the containment unit of the Outlander. During this period, it will not cause any direct damage and cannot be attacked. After lingering in front of the unit door for 5 minutes, the Dark Knight Poet will randomly release one of 3 negative effects: fear, lethargy, or concealment, and return to its containment unit on its own. The negative effect will last for 15 minutes. 6. You can talk to the Dark Knight Poet about poetry or the Outlander. He is very interested, truly. Open black lens bracket. The sword-wielding judge. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Any evil will eventually be brought to justice. I firmly believe this. Close black lens bracket. Classification: 001318. Risk level: WAW. Damage: 5 to 7. Red. Max PE box output: 50. Cliff oath counter: 2. Wulian felt like he was a Christmas tree. Blue headphones, gold-rimmed glasses, a bling-bling badge on his chest, bright red gloves, 2 oversized wings, 1 black and 1 white, oh right, and a key-shaped pendant. If the employee's basics were simple, weren't the ego gifts supposed to be simple too? He felt like he would drop loot at any second, the kind where if his health hit 0, he'd go, pop, and explode, scattering orange, gold, purple, and red light all over the floor. Well, looking at it this way, he must be a boss-level Christmas tree. Strangely enough, except for the Outlander, he had managed to pluck an EGO gift from every other abnormality without exception. Yet, he hadn't been able to farm a single gift from Gertrude Descartes. Could it be that he actually had a great affinity with abnormalities? Or were those gifts some kind of first clear reward for the levels? Come to think of it, he could retire after finishing this job. Would the gifts on him leave the company with him? Would his money be enough to live in the nest after he got out? What was the food like for people in the city? It wouldn't do to go hungry. Thinking about these random things, Wulian walked into the containment unit of the sword-wielding judge. Manager, the names you're giving them now are quite high class. Wulian thought expressionlessly. What kind of decent person would call a lady holding a triangular bayonet with an aura of 1.8 meters Oswald-wielding, judge, manager? Do you have any clue, manager? Forget it, X is just a 50-day-old baby, what could he have done wrong? It's better to denounce Angela and the employees responsible for naming. Good afternoon, ma'am. I am Wulian, an employee of Lobotomy. It was time for the delightful not greeting segment. Wulian nodded politely and gave a sincere greeting to the petite, solemn-faced young lady. Good afternoon, I am Xiao Derecha. As if out of professional habit, Xiao looked Wulian up and down, only looking away after confirming everything was in order. I am glad to meet you, and what makes me even gladder is that you don't seem like the type to cause trouble. A faint sense of pressure washed over him, and Wulian subconsciously straightened his back. No, right, I am a law-abiding citizen. There's no need to be so nervous. Xiao sighed helplessly. It's quite peaceful here, no one has died for a while. Your public security is indeed quite good. Wow, that's truly rare for Lobotomy. Wait, no, isn't the death rate highest among the clerks? Let me think, the known abnormalities either can't or haven't escaped, or they follow the "don't poke me and I won't poke you" rule. The only two with large-scale AoE, the End Times Singer, and the Dark Knight Poet, still rely on applying negative debuffs to inflict damage. This branch has a very good eye for choosing abnormalities. It's way better than the headquarters, god-tier pairings like Yin plus Yang, or Big Bad Wolf plus Little Red Riding Hood. Thinking that this stability was partly due to his own contribution, Wulian couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Hee, you flatter me. However, Xiao pointed at the key pendant on Wulian's chest. Haven't you already met Furs? Why haven't you gone out to take a look? Go out to take a look. So that's what, disturbing her wandering, does. The manager was so anxious to stop me, was he afraid his star employee would ditch the high-interest loan and run away? After all, I have to save money for retirement. Wulian responded nonchalantly. Once he saved enough money, he could certainly go out. This was a branch office, it didn't have the troubles of the headquarters. They certainly wouldn't restrict his personal freedom, let alone hand him over to a Sephira to be dismissed. Wait, is this really a branch office in the general sense? At least in Wulian's impression, the X, who carried so many expectations, never had the leeway to care about other branch offices, did he? So many days had passed, why was he only realizing this now? And where did these impressions come from? Lobotomy Corporation, Aeon, Seed of Light, how did he know about these things? A game. Yes, it was a game. The iron curtain blocking his cognition finally cracked, and long-sealed memories came rushing back at this moment. What's wrong with you? Seeing Wulian, who had been silent for a while, suddenly cover his face with his hands and tremble slightly, Xiao took a step forward, trying to check on his condition. What was horrifying was, when she pulled Wulian's palms away to expose his face, what appeared before her was merely a calm, smiling face. Work preference. Instinct. Common. Insight. Common. Attachment. Common. Repression. Low. Managerial guidelines. 1. For every 5 employees or clerks who die within the facility, the cliff oath counter of the sword-wielding judge will immediately decrease. Personnel killed by execution bullets should not be counted. 2. When the work result is bad, the cliff oath counter of the sword-wielding judge will immediately decrease. 3. When the work result is good, the cliff oath counter of the sword-wielding judge will immediately increase. 4. When a level 2 alert occurs, the sword-wielding judge might breach containment directly. You can view her as a sheriff. Ms. Xiao, spending time with you is a relaxing thing. Having finished his work and turned off the intercom, Wulian stood still with his hands behind his back, smilingly bidding farewell to the sword-wielding judge. Pity is, I want to be a bit rebellious and cause some trouble. You won't cut me down in advance, will you? You wouldn't, right? Xiao looked at Wulian steadily for a while. She didn't press him or stop him. Instead, she handed over a triangular military bayonet. Don't use it to hurt people. I'll try my best. Wulian examined the hard-won ego weapon in his hand, then looked up and winked at Xiao. I just want to go out and see. Clearly, autonomously, to see the sky outside. Stepping out of the containment unit, he was met by Gerda, who was being lectured by Descartes, specifically, being held by the ear and commanded to his face not. What's the situation this time? Wulian rushed forward excitedly, ready to hear about another great achievement of this lively junior. Descartes seemed to have lost all her strength and means, not even having the energy to explain anything to Wulian. But facing the senior's overflowing look of anticipation, she had to explain a few words. It's still FO1-34. I was very respectful to it this time. Gerda shouted aggrievedly, I already prostrated myself before it, what more do you want? By prostrating yourself, do you mean hugging its leg and begging it to give you an EGO gift, and then continuing to pester it after being rejected? Descartes hit the nail on the head. I didn't hug its leg. Those were clearly slippery tentacles, and it said it had already given gifts to others. There's no reason I can't have one. Gerda tried to find some twisted logic, but with little effect. Oh boy, this time it wasn't Xiao Ke, it was Lord Klein. First provoking Gehrman and then pestering the fool, picking the 2 hardest nuts in a pile of iron persimmons. Gerda, you kid really are a genius. But gifts already given. Recalling the attitudes of the various ladies and gentlemen of the Tarot Club, especially the reactions of Alger, Katlia, and Leonard. Wulian had a rough idea in his heart. The gaze of the King of Yellow and Black. So he had been labeled as one of them, so early on. As expected, the gentle and thoughtful Xiao Ke is really hard not to love. How is the performance of D01-123? In a dark room filled with monitors, a man in a white lab coat casually closed another screen that had turned to static, asking a question nonchalantly. Strangely, he was clearly chatting with someone, yet there was no one beside him. Excellent. A female voice as pleasant as morning dew rang out from thin air, and simultaneously, a young female figure with fresh hair color and a dignified posture emerged. It is able to resist the erosion of those 9 abnormalities very well. Or rather, they were born from the same source. The company's recent enkephalin collection progress is quite considerable. Manager. Is there any risk of loss of control or infection? X took the document beside him but didn't flip through it. He simply adjusted the surveillance footage, staring at the chestnut-haired boy in the center of the lens who looked like a stick figure ragdoll. He was talking to 2 other employees, smiling with crinkled eyes, seemingly in a very good mood. There is no risk, and besides, that's just a small branch. Manager, I must remind you, you should be putting your main energy into that encyclopedia. Angela responded bluntly. Ignoring Angela's subtle sarcasm, the manager followed the advice and brought the document to his eyes, flipping through it again. Open black lens bracket shepherd boy close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket and outstanding, employee, close black lens bracket. Classification, D01-123. Managerial guidelines. 1. Unlike FO134 and the other 8 abnormalities of the same batch, the information of D01123 will not turn into a hidden or distorted state over time, and its memory can be overridden to a certain extent by technical means. 2. When D01123's self-perception is that of a human, his actions are regulated by social standards such as law and morality. Based on this, he can be treated as an employee, maintaining tolerance for all requests except for leaving the company. 3. D01123 cannot produce energy through management. When not stimulated, it will not have any intention to escape. It can be managed according to the regulations for tool-type abnormalities. 4. D01123 will not be affected by the transformation of abnormalities from the same batch and has an instinctive reaction to manage such abnormalities. Its performance in energy extraction work is excellent. 5. D01123 once had an experience of escaping using O01-413. It is imperative to prevent D01123 from contacting O01-413 in its wandering state. To prevent this entry from being hidden or distorted, do not add more information. 6. Every filled square D01123's filled square should be cleared, but filled square otherwise D01123 will tend toward filled square. This entry has been completely crossed out. X flipped through the pages, thinking that Angela's reminder made some sense. This was indeed a document with detailed information. Perhaps one more entry can be added. A clear, youthful voice suddenly rang out in the dark room, with an undercurrent of brewing tension beneath the lively and bright tone. D01123 does not like being arranged, and even more so, does not like being called it. The alarm sounded belatedly, broken and shrill. Abnormality Shepherd Boy has breached containment. Chapter 61, Family. Yo, you're awake. A smiling female voice exploded in Wulian's ear, scaring him so much his body stiffened and he nearly cried out. Heaven help him, he had only just returned from the spirit world. Cheap old father, where are you? What's going on now? Save me. I followed the mysticism connection and, whoosh, I was back in my body. I haven't even had time to observe the situation yet, ah. Wulian closed his eyes and played dead, while in his heart he was making countless desperate calls to Shi Enlu. He knew, of course, that Shi Enlu, who was only shallowly parasitizing him, couldn't hear his inner thoughts, but with such a large spirit body added to the physical form and an unknown person lurking nearby, Shi Enlu should have at least sensed his arrival and taken the initiative to share the situation with him, right? Have some situational awareness. Hey. I know you're listening, pretending to sleep is useless, Junior Wulian. The owner of the voice waited patiently for Wulian's response. Great, looks like this person has him pinned down. However, this voice sounds a bit familiar. After failing to get any feedback from Shi Enlu for a long time, Wulian sighed inwardly and opened his eyes as if throwing caution to the wind. He was in a bedroom, spacious and bright, with simple decor. At the moment, Wulian was lying on the bed in a rather dignified posture, looking like a princess who had just pricked her finger on a spindle and was waiting for the story's end. And that young lady standing beside him with her hands behind her back, leaning down to look at him with a smile, who else could it be but Lavender? Good afternoon, Senior Lavender, or should I call you cousin? Wulian, no longer planning to play dumb, flipped over and sat up, his clear eyes meeting her interested deep brown ones directly without flinching. Lavender Noy, the temporary worker lady who had once helped him manage his residence, and also the journalism senior he had met by chance at Backland University. She was still wearing her favorite white shirt paired with a warm-colored vest and long skirt, though as the weather turned cooler, she had added a woolen coat over it. The last time Wulian had seen her in this outfit was during a cross-department public lecture. Back then, Lavender had said goodbye to him, saying she was leaving school to find an internship. Hey, so she found her way to Winter County. Given that Shi Enlu's destination was the Zoroast branch in Winter County, their ancestral home, Shi Enlu himself was of normal intelligence and had some self-preservation capabilities, so he should have arrived safely, and Lavender, whom he hadn't seen in a long time, had presumed to appear by Wulian's side in a relatively private setting like a bedroom. The most terrifying guess, Lavender was a loose aim in invading the Zoroast branch. The most ridiculous guess, Lavender was just an ordinary journalism intern who had wandered into a Beander family by mistake. The most likely guess, Lavender was Wulian's cousin, the highly regarded niece Shi Enlu had once mentioned. Not stupid, are you? Lavender looked Wulian up and down, which served as a tacit admission of her status as his cousin. Come with me, don't tell me you're not hungry. Hungry. Wulian, who had just barely relaxed his mind, froze for a moment before his stomach let out an untimely growl, followed by a sharp cramp in his gut. He instinctively curled up, hurriedly got out of bed to put on his shoes, and quickly chased after Lavender's receding figure. Xianlu, where on earth did you go? Your dear son is about to starve to death. Xianlu was in the dining room. I am your father. He looked down at Wulian, who was feasting, his dark, beady eyes full of wordless exasperation. Wulian Zoroast, I am your father. Who is so bored they'd teach such nonsense to a starling? Wulian speared a piece of lasagna and stirred it, wrapping the pulled cheese into a plump cocoon before stuffing it into his mouth with an nom, contentedly savoring the bouncy milky fragrance enveloped in tomato meat sauce. So delicious. Speaking of which, how long had he actually been hungry? Why didn't his cheap old father do something about it? His chewing motion came to a subtle halt. Wulian looked up jerkily, first at the impotently fuming purple-winged starling, then turned his head to look at Lavender. The playful expression on her face didn't look like something caused by simple parroting. If he were to believe that starling. As if drawn by the food, Wulian's head buried lower and lower, deeper and deeper, until he was almost about to fall into the plate, accompanied by irregular shoulder tremors and the sound of suppressed laughter. Three things. Having finally recovered from his extremely rude imaginings, Wulian looked back at the starling perched on the wall lamp bracket and waved 3 fingers. Tell me 3 things to prove your identity. The starling tilted its head in a human-like manner and dropped a bombshell as soon as it opened its beak. The old man knows about your situation. My situation? Wulian glanced at Lavender inconspicuously. She still maintained her leisurely, smiling demeanor. Okay, fine, it wasn't just the old man who knew. Be more specific. Even with his guesses, Wulian didn't intend to let this vague sentence slide. You are a high-level existence who replaced Wulian, the starling said succinctly. Without waiting for Wulian to speak again, it briskly laid out further proof. You have connections with some Nighthawks in Tingen and Backland, but you deliberately distanced yourself after pretending to have amnesia. Also, you've already met those 2 angels. There was nothing wrong with that. Wulian suppressed the faint sense of strangeness in his heart and tentatively accepted the fact that his cheap father had officially lost his human status. Well then, good afternoon, Dad, have you eaten? Don't bother yourself, Xianlu huffed, turning his head to preen the feathers on his right wing. By the way, how did you end up like this? Wulian had thought the Zoroast family would have bird-related PTSD, especially regarding crows with white eye rings. I can explain that question, Lavender said, showing no intention of preserving her elder's dignity. Instead, she eagerly raised her hand. This is a topic of soul-body compatibility. To put it simply, your father doesn't have a high enough life level. Parasitizing your body would only cause him to be influenced by Wulian's etheric body and covered by Wulian's self-perception, eventually blurring his own identity in a factual sense and becoming a poor imitator. What a blunt way to put it. Wulian sucked in a breath, impressed by the explanation, but suddenly found a key point. This theory doesn't explain why he turned into a starling though. Was human bee imitating human is somehow worse than a starling imitating a human? But this way, he will only maintain his perception of himself as a human, that is, his identity as Xianlu, and no confusion will occur, Lavender replied as if she had expected the question. You just need to talk to him often. Speaking of which, Grandpa has already been very considerate of your father, that's his favorite starling. Hey, I really should thank him then. Xianlu's bright yellow beak clicked twice, as if he were grinding his teeth. He really should thank the old man for not stuffing him into a snuff bottle. Grandpa, my grandfather. I haven't met him yet. Wulian was somewhat curious about that old gentleman. In Xianlu's words, he was a caring, humorous, old fogey with a bad sense of humor. Too late. Lavender spread her hands at him. The couple went on their honeymoon, on the very day they finished dealing with your father. Honeymoon. Well, they must be very much in love. As Wulian thought this, Xianlu, Lavender, and even he himself seemed to be coated in a layer of shimmering light. Yeah, like light bulbs. I'm not interested in being your guide, anyway. Uncle grew up here too, so you two can bond over your feelings. Lavender stretched lazily, not caring at all. Good night. Sweet dreams, Wulian nodded, accepting Lavender's arrangement. Well, then he'd take a tour, and while he was at it, he could confirm some things with his dad. About the spirit world, about Amen. Wulian tilted his head and greeted his tiny dad, smiling brightly like a sunny spring day, though a lingering look of contemplation remained deep in his eyes. Chapter 62, The Character in the Play. For a long time, Wulian had regarded himself as a high-dimensional overseer, or at least an existence similar to one. From the 3D world to the 1D world, how could that not count as high-dimensional? Reading the entire world of Lord of the Mysteries like a book, how could that not be called overseeing? As for more evidence, Wulian dared to guarantee on Amon's personality that besides the 5 words, high-dimensional overseer, there wasn't even a single stroke of description in the entire book of Lord of the Mysteries. Because of this, before he used Xiao Kei's help to find the coordinates of his cheat, Wulian thought he was an outer deity with only status, an idealist who could function as an observer, to a certain extent, the so-called, when you do not look at this flower in your heart return to silence, when you come to look at this flower, its colors suddenly become clear. Only in this way could his miraculous constitution of blocking an angel but not being able to defend against a midnight poet be explained. Only in this way did the fact that he could suddenly remain conscious in a dream have a possibility other than the Evernight goddess responding at high speed to pull someone out online. Besides, didn't Adam also treat him as an outer deity? All cognition collapsed after he confirmed the coordinates. At first, Wulian didn't have much of an impression of that cheat space. The time he transmuted was the first. He saw it once when consuming the Marauder potion, and he contacted it again between half asleep and half awake that night, and that was it. To be fair, you can't entirely blame him for not noticing this cheat, right? When anyone who has studied the original work sees a scene where red is redder, yellow is yellower, and various colors are intensely overlaid, who would think of any possibility other than the spirit world? Obviously, little Wulian confused that childishly stroked, brightly colored, fuzzy scroll with the spirit world and had never actively investigated it. It wasn't until he encountered Eamon at the Tingen platform and ducked into the spirit world trying to lure the monster plus run away that Wulian stumbled upon the existence of the cheat. Unfortunately, there was no chance to study it properly then, and he had to find the coordinates again to enter once more. After all this talk, what exactly is this long-awaited cheat? Well, it's actually nothing special. It was a small space of only a dozen square meters. If one discarded those colorful special effects, it could be described as clean, tidy, and empty, except for a laptop with a cracked screen. Simply put, Wulian had an extra workstation in the spirit world. Well, it wasn't that simple. After all, what are you dazed for? Benefactor's building hopped on Wulian's head a few times, his claws making a mess of that chestnut hair. It's just picking a room, do you need to be so conflicted? Ah, Wulian responded as if waking from a dream, the room I was just in. That's a guest room. Benefactor's building lowered his body, his pitch-black beady eyes staring at Wulian with quite a bit of intimidation, as if saying, if you don't pick another one, don't stay here. Pointing randomly at a bedroom facing the sun, Wulian stopped worrying about other things and asked directly, does the family have a way to screen for Amon's parasitism? The old man personally oversees it, he's always been cautious and carries a demigod-level sealed artifact with him. If a problem is found, exiling is in time and then running away with the whole family is no problem. So, when did Eamon parasitize you? Wulian narrowed his eyes. The always from that god of deceit's mouth really bothered him. As for why he didn't ask before and waited until now. Compared to that previously penniless, unfalsifiable cheap old father, the current benefactor's building had successfully returned to the Zoroaster family and even had Lavender's endorsement, making him a much more trustworthy person. The little lamb, I'm not clear on when Wulian was parasitized. You know, Eamon has always been patient in this regard. Benefactor's building fell silent for a while. It should be after Derry sacrificed herself. He would be more interesting once he was brought into 008's sight. Also, the Holy Cathedral's methods of hiding memories can be seen as the goddess's blessing. Even for Eamon, it's hard to escape the gaze of a true god when the parasitized target receives a divine blessing. At least at that time, the original host hadn't been parasitized yet. As for me, I started pursuing Derry when I was 19. To marry her, I left the family at 23. I can only confirm that the time I was parasitized was after that. Deep parasitism, you should be very clear, he took over Benefactor's building's body on the day I died. That's just the manifestation, neither you nor I are sure if he lurked for a period before that. Wulian exhaled a small breath of turbid air. Is it convenient to talk about the process of you parasitizing me? There's nothing to say. Benefactor's building gave a short laugh, the airy sound squeezed from his syrinx sharp and strange, just a Beander item my mother shoved to me to save my life. I see. For a long time, the father and son didn't say another word. While the cheap old father fell into an emo state, the unfilial descendant had no time for sentimental sorrows. He was going to participate in the tarot club tomorrow. As the debuting Mr. Lovers, he had to prepare well. Well, before the meeting, he should try to figure out his position and authority in this branch of the family, and see what plans Benefactor's building had for bringing him to Winter County besides avoiding disaster. And, the mystical knowledge and family secrets he learned from the original work could also be used as exchange items above the gray fog. He had even memorized the potion formulas for almost all members of the Tarot Club for low to mid sequences. Cough, cough, family, are potion formulas expensive? Yes, too expensive. Usually 450 gold pounds each. People can't bear to buy them. Today, Little Wu has brought down the formula prices for everyone. Not 998, not 668, take it home for 300 gold pounds. Speaking of which, when Xiao Ke turns into a Beander characteristic wholesaler, could he cooperate with that not cold enough adventurer? He provides the map, Xiao Ke follows the steed, and pirates consciously turn into gold pounds. No, no, now is not the time to think about this. Wu Lian rubbed his cheeks hard, trying to use physical means to retain his gradually straying thoughts. Seeing from the corner of his eye that Benefactor's building had already hidden away to rest, he adjusted his glasses and inconspicuously tapped his right temple twice, activating spirit vision. As one of the Zoroaster family's hideouts, this house was naturally very clean. Logically, there shouldn't be anything rich in spirituality before Wu Lian's eyes. What he saw should be no different from before activating spirit vision. Then let me ask you. Why are there two boxes in front of Wu Lian's eyes? One is a computer window, and the other is also a computer window. Wu Lian was very familiar with the window on the left. It was a Word document with read-only permissions, a narrow strip docked at the edge of his vision. The content: consumed Marauder Potion, contacted Klein Moretti, prevented Lanrius from escaping, picked up a cat, consumed Swindler Potion, joined the Nighthawks, entered Backland University, death escape, consumed Cryptologist Potion, involved in the Wraith Wholesale event, settled weekend, staked out Klein Moretti, joined the Tarot Club, discovered, cheat, consumed Prometheus Potion, ... There, it's a to-do list, like that. It even updates in real time. After Wu Lian dove into the cheat space and properly started that computer, such a long string of to-do list automatically popped up on the screen, and it unhurriedly checked in the discovered cheat column. From then on, Wu Lian could see this window through spirit vision. It was also from then on that Wu Lian, this existence who had always considered himself a high-dimensional overseer, truly realized. He was the one being observed. The character in the play. Wu Lian blinked his eyes very quickly and rubbed the corner of his eye while pushing his glasses. Because he had been dazed for too long, the long-activated spirit vision was like high-energy consuming software running in the background, emitting light and heat, causing Wu Lian's brain to throb and a sharp pain between his eyebrows. But he was reluctant to turn off spirit vision for a long time, and he didn't dare to look closely at the blue and white window on the right for a long time, as if the glance he just took had exhausted all his courage. If he hadn't seen it wrong, no, how could he see it wrong? That was a response. Right in the My Phone chat interface, right under that pile of messy files and pictures, right next to that sentence he had sent jokingly, Control Tower, this is Earth, please respond if received. His other device, the phone belonging to Alternate Identity, actually had a response today. Received. Are you Alternate Identity? I am Wu Lian Yassos. Chapter 63, Mr. Lover's Grand Debut. Hoo-ha. In the early morning, CEO Woolen woke up from his 30,000 square centimeter single extra-wide luxury solid wood bed and let out an elegant yet wild yawn. Weekend? Wait a second, don't be in a rush, I'm coming, time to eat. The sleepy-headed man realized something was wrong and shook his head groggily. His eyes became as clear as if they had been wiped by windshield wipers. Oh dear, being addicted to online chatting is not advisable. Wu Lian sighed like an old man, not mentioning a single word about how long he had played single-player games while waiting for a response from Alternate Identity. Dave the Diver, Plants vs. Zombies, Lobotomy Corporation, Don't Starve, Potion Craft, Stardew Valley, Bloons TD6, Hollow Knight. Thank you all. Oh, classmate, don't starve together, you may sit down. Speaking of last night's chat with Alternate Identity, Wu Lian was almost moved to tears. The original owner truly deserved to be called a little lamb. He was gentle, polite, and understanding. Even though he feared the eeriness and madness of the mysterious world, he still cooperated wholeheartedly to find a chance for the two of them to swap identities. Of course, in just one night, they hadn't figured out anything. From the original owner, Wu Lian managed to find out more details about his life. For example, that blue cat was an accident that happened when he was 13. Or for example, his consciousness in the mysterious world indeed vanished during a sacrificial ritual involving an evil god, and when he opened his eyes again, he already existed as alternate identity. Besides that, there was a long overdue piece of good news: the homework he hadn't turned in could be submitted late. But this news came way too late. Hey. He's been struggling in another world for over 2 months already. After confirming that the two of them couldn't change the status quo for the time being, Wulian reached a consensus with the original owner, manage their identities well and take good care of each other's family and friends, just as they were already doing. Along the way, Wulian instigated alternate identity to search for pictures of a purple-winged starling and, when the other party was confused, casually dropped a line, "This is what your old man looks like now." Then he leisurely started a game of Plants vs. Zombies, treating the continuous clanging and powerful notification sounds from QQ as nothing more than passing clouds. Hee. At 2 hours 59 minutes and 58 seconds p.m., illusory crimson light surged like a tide, enveloping Wulian's soul as scheduled and carrying it to that magnificent hall resembling a giant's residence. Xiao Kei's timing was off. Was it because he changed his pocket watch? Or did his hand shake from nervousness? Wulian thought idly, quietly looking at the three figures appearing almost simultaneously beside him, identifying those gentlemen and ladies obscured by the gray fog, whose hair color and body shape were all that could be discerned. The lady with the brilliant golden hair was just about to lift her skirt, but her intention to greet was halted by the blue-haired gentleman's gesture. Meanwhile, Mr. Hanged Man's gaze immediately bypassed the tall classmate's son, landing on him with scrutiny. As if time had been frozen by someone, above the gray fog was only filled with a deathly silence. "Good afternoon, Mr. the Fool." The girl's light and bright voice broke the momentary silence. Audrey tilted her head to look at the new member with chestnut hair, brown eyes, and a thin build, choosing to advance the agenda of this Beander gathering through an inquiry. "Who is this?" "This is Mr. Lovers, a new member of the gathering," Klein responded leisurely, once again inwardly praising Miss Justice's timely cooperation as he turned toward Wulian. "They are Justice, Hanged Man, and Son. As expected, our tarot club has grown again." With her internal guess verified, Audrey restrained her heartfelt joy and simply turned to Wulian, giving a formal and reserved bow. "Good afternoon, Mr. Lovers." "Good afternoon, Miss Justice." Wulian stood up and returned the gesture, his smiling voice gentle and clear. He had practiced for half a day to get that tone right. Unfortunately, Mr. Hanged Man didn't leave him any time for self-satisfaction. "Mr. the Fool, I have obtained a total of 19 pages of Russell's diary this time. This is the payment I owe. My sincere thanks to you for sending your retainer to help me eliminate Kilangos." Wow, that's a paragraph with a huge amount of information. If it were any ordinary Beander, they should be expressing shock right now, right? Like, shock. Russell's mysterious essays are actually a diary. Major breakthrough. Long buried strange runes expected to be deciphered. Incredible. The person who killed the brutal pirate was actually him. But well, I'm from Class 3. The young man slightly curled the corner of his mouth and slowly raised his hand to his chin, his entire being exuding a worldly leisure and self-satisfaction. His posture was very relaxed. Yes, relaxed. But isn't this something very startling? Whether it's the truth about Russell's notes or the death of Kilangos, does he not understand what this represents? Or rather, did he already know all this? Audrey subconsciously performed a psychological profile on the member at the other end of the gray fog, but she seemed to discover something extraordinary in her observation. Her emerald eyes couldn't help but drift toward the newly arrived Mr. Lovers, almost causing her to speak out and break her spectator state. "Calm down, Audrey. This is a participant chosen by Mr. the Fool. It would be strange if there wasn't something special about him. Phew, observe patiently." Just as Miss Justice was feeling surprised by Wulian's performance, our respectable, great, and mysterious Mr. the Fool was working hard to spin his brain and maintain his style. "Hey, this is the principle of equivalent exchange." After Mr. Hanged Man submitted the 6 pages of the diary for this session, the Tarot Club fell into a brief silence, with only the rustling sound of the great existence rubbing the paper echoing through the empty hall above the gray fog. Secrets of the Fourth Epic from Mr. Dorr, complaints about the Savon pathway, and Russell's thoughts on the eve of suppressing the rebellion. Klein ignored the parts where his fellow countrymen drank wine, played cards, and looked at beauties, deciding to do another, learn and sell, act. In his diary, Russell mentioned some common knowledge. "It seems I haven't told you yet." Audrey was stunned for a moment, but was soon affected by the joy surging from her heart, happily turning toward Klein with a reserved but obvious look of anticipation on her face. Mr. Hanged Man didn't seem to have any excessive movements, but he unconsciously straightened his back. Classmate Sun couldn't hide his curiosity as he tilted his head toward the head of the long table, wanting to know what kind of common knowledge this strange celebrity would propose. Wulian sat up straight with a thud, hands placed flat on the table, eyes fixed on Klein's direction. His attitude was so proper it was almost exaggerated. He must have been a typical good student in modern times. Klein complained secretly, only managing to maintain his profound image with difficulty as he heard his most appreciated class representative, Miss Justice's cheerful inquiry, "Mr. the Fool, can I pay a reward in exchange for this common knowledge?" "No, there is no need." The great existence leaned leisurely back in the bronze high-back chair. "These are all simple common knowledge. I believe some among you have already mastered them." "Oi, we've formed an awesome remedial class. Guess who wasn't invited?" "Yes, it's you, classmate Sun." Ignoring the messy thoughts in his heart, Klein began to seriously explain the law of indestructibility of Beander characteristics, and the law of conservation of Beander characteristics within similar sequences, and even used the interpretation of the latter to get two promises of collecting intelligence on the secret order for free, using up classmate Sun's accumulated compensation opportunity. Wulian naturally knew these things. Theoretically, he should have continued to maintain his profound image, but now he decided to go deep among the masses. "Respected Mr. the Fool," he raised his hand slightly, "besides the three pathways of Seer, Marauder, and Apprentice, what other systems can be interchanged?" "I didn't even know these three pathways could be interchanged." Klein felt a sense of defeat in his heart, but his face remained unchanged even if Mount Tai were to collapse before him. "When enough intelligence has been collected, we will make a trade." Although he felt sorry for classmate Lovers for getting an important piece of information for free, he would find an opportunity to make it up. He secretly made up his mind. "Apprentice. Isn't that where Furs is? I wonder if she can join our tarot club." "And Xiao, I must suggest this to Mr. the Fool later." Audrey puffed her cheeks very slightly, then quickly withdrew the unelegant movement, straightening her back with a bit of a guilty conscience. "Miss Justice." Wulian spoke intentionally when Audrey relaxed, and seeing her body stiffen slightly, he withdrew his gaze with satisfaction. "Please forgive my presumption. Do you have any needs regarding formulas?" "No, I only need the complete pituitary gland of an adult rainbow salamander." Audrey retorted in her heart, but then heard the other party slowly finish the sentence, from sequence 9 to sequence 5. Audrey thought she had misheard. She even wanted to pull her ears regardless of her image. "Oh, and those for Bard and Sailor," Wulian said seemingly innocently, his gaze sweeping halfway across the hall above the gray fog. "It seems there are a few more people who aren't so calm anymore." Chapter 64. The ambitious second generation rich. Happy New Year, everyone. Who exactly was this Lovers who had suddenly appeared? Why did he specifically mention the Bard and Sailor pathways? And Justice, she hadn't revealed that she was a spectator. Could he have deduced it from our individual characteristics? My hair color? No, the possibility of being mixed race is far higher than the influence of a pathway. That's not enough to base an inference on. Did Mr. Fool reveal our information beforehand? No, that doesn't fit his usual style. Although he was indeed tempted by the easily obtainable potion formulas, the first thing Alger thought of was the issue of identity determination. From Wulian's performance, he seemed more like a member of a Beander family who was inexperienced in the world yet possessed many secrets, rather than a sharp-eyed, experienced veteran. Could it be that the matter of the pathways was truly just a coincidence? This was also the question Klein was pondering. When did the young Mr. Lovers notice the pathways these members belonged to? He was certain he hadn't revealed anything in their previous conversations. At least Wulian hasn't mentioned the Seer pathway yet, otherwise, I'd really have to wonder if he has some kind of superpower. Klein muttered to himself half-jokingly. Sequence 9 to sequence 5 of the Spectator pathway. In other words, I don't need to wait, and I don't need to go through the trouble of collecting them. As long as I meet Mr. Lover's conditions, I can get the potion formulas I want. Well, I hope he has some interest in money. The gold pounds I have never seemed to be very useful here. Audrey was very excited, feeling as if she had found the sensation of shopping at a department store again, which made her feel familiar and happy. Sorry, I've fallen into the habit of stereotyping again. If you all belong to other pathways, you can also ask me. At worst, I'll just go back and memorize them again. Wulian's voice grew smaller as he spoke, with the last sentence being nearly a whisper. He seemed to have just realized that he was desperately exposing himself like the foolish son of a wealthy landlord. All roads lead to Rome, but some people are born in Rome. Klein suppressed his faint envy and once again looked forward to the day his alternate account would make its debut. Mr. Lovers, what do you need? The first to lose his composure was the student, son. I want to exchange for the light supplicant potion formula. Mr. Fool, who had been observing, or rather, watching the fun, stiffened slightly. He had that formula. He had it. He had obtained it at the risk of his life from the mutated sun emblem. Gold pounds. Low in gold pounds, Wulian responded without hesitation. We'll trade at the market price for formulas. So direct. Klein sighed inwardly, suddenly noticing a slight sense of incongruity. Gold pounds. This wealthy young gentleman, belonging to an ancient Beander family, who had just rented him a house at a bargain price, wanted to use formulas to exchange for gold pounds. He couldn't have been scammed in these short 2 days, could he? Something like paying a ransom, making an investment, or a pig butchering scam. He thought aimlessly about these things, truly unable to suppress the curiosity in his heart. Sorry sir, I don't have gold pounds. Little son lowered his head in disappointment, then hurriedly added, I can follow the team to participate in battles and obtain Beander materials from monsters. You can take them to sell. Wulian's tone was somewhat hesitant, as if he were still thinking. Perhaps I can give you the formula first, and we can consider the payment later. I believe with Mr. Fool as a witness there won't be any problems with our transaction. Facing the eager and expectant gaze from the student, son, Klein smiled and nodded. Mr. Lovers, I also hope to exchange for a potion formula, specifically, Sequence 7 Feet Psychiatrist. Audrey secretly encouraged herself and took the initiative to make her request to Wulian. I can pay in gold pounds. Faced with Miss Justice's cooperation, Wulian instead shook his head. Sorry, miss, please allow me to ask an intrusive question. Do you, or your family, possess a prominent status, considerable wealth, or both? What's going on? Mr. Hanged Man can see through my identity, and Mr. Lovers can too. Are my external characteristics really that obvious? Well, okay, I indeed showed off my financial abundance, but asking like this is really quite forward. Audrey felt a bit displeased, but she controlled her expression well, only tilting her chin noncommittally. Does this have any impact on our transaction? If possible, rather than gold pounds, I would like to ask you to use your status to provide a convenience. Let a small insurance company be smoothly established in Backland and remain free from unnecessary harassment. That is all, Wulian responded sincerely. Wait, is this little fellow countryman trying to start a business? This idea is quite dangerous. As the saying goes, it's not the second generation rich who just eat and wait to die that you should fear, but the ones with great ambitions. And an insurance company of all things. The water in there is very deep. Klein recalled the industry insiders he had read about before and felt he should use his identity as a keyboard economist to properly enlighten Wulian, this ambitious second-generation rich kid. To Audrey, Wulian's request was nothing at all. Although as a noble lady, it wasn't suitable for her to provide overt assistance, whether it was mentioning it to her friend Viscount Glaint or establishing a weak connection with that company in the name of an investor, it would be enough to satisfy the needs of the transaction. That can be an additional condition. On that basis, I will also purchase the formula at market price. How about that? Audrey responded lightly. Thank you very much. Wulian naturally wouldn't refuse such a cost-effective deal. Then, having secured her next potion formula, Audrey looked toward Alger with an elegant movement, her green eyes shimmering with expectant light. Mr. Hanged Man, have you obtained the complete pituitary gland of an adult rainbow salamander? The following is not the main text, but I still hope everyone will take a look. Thank you very much. First of all, I wish everyone a happy new year. May the new year be happy and smooth for all of you. Also, although it's not great to say this during the new year, please, some of you, stop using those grave sweeping, Orasul summoning styles of comments to urge for updates. I opened the comments section happily on the morning of the second day of the Lunar New Year, only to see a soul summoning update request. My good mood for the whole day was gone. If I hadn't been lazy, I would have seen that comment on the first day of the new year. I really hate it. Hate the act, not the person. I've expressed before that I don't like these kinds of comments like grave sweeping or soul summoning, but maybe my tone was too joking, or the location was too obscure to be seen, as some people still post similar comments when urging for updates. So I'll say it seriously here in the main text, I really don't like it. And when I see these kinds of requests, I don't think about updating sooner. I think, who cares about writing this damn novel? Please don't leave such comments anymore, okay? This is a labor of love, and emotional fluctuations are more likely to affect the update speed. By the way, I'd like to take a leave of absence. Because I need to prepare well for my exams, I probably won't update for the next month. If I do, pretend I didn't say this, but the author hasn't run away. Alright, thank you all for reading this far. See you in the next chapter. Side Story 6, The Most Ordinary Day. Happy Birthday, Xiao K. March 4, 1350, Tingen. Good morning, Miss Roseanne. The sunshine is quite nice today, isn't it? As usual, Klein arrived at the Blackthorn Security Company promptly before the 8 o'clock bell rang, beginning his day as an unpretentious worker. Step 1. Take off his hat, bow, and greet his colleague at the front desk. Ah, Klein. Oh, good morning. The sunshine is great too. Have you eaten yet? Roseanne was rarely not dozing off at her post, but at this moment, she seemed a bit distracted, and even showed signs of being slightly startled upon seeing Klein. She couldn't be taking advantage of my absence to secretly badmouth me to others, could she? Klein thought with amusement, casually placing his removed top hat back on his head. Yes, white bread with bacon and fried eggs. It was quite a hearty meal. I made it myself, and the taste was all right. Goddess. Roseanne took an exaggerated breath. Even though I've said it many times, Klein, you must be the kind of gentleman many good girls fancy. In fact, I haven't even had a proper romance yet. Klein gave a bitter smile in his heart, while on the surface, he only smiled faintly. Thank you for the compliment, Miss Roseanne. Shall I head inside? No, all right, see you later. Roseanne responded at a rapid pace, retreating back to her seat in a self-deceiving manner. She held up a copy of the latest, Honest Person's Daily, covering her face and blocking Klein's inquisitive gaze. Roseanne's reaction, why is it so strange? Klein tried to ponder, but to no avail. Completely bewildered, he had just stepped into the inner corridor when he was dragged into the entertainment room by Cohen Lee, who was stifling a laugh. Klein, help us out in this emergency. We're one person short for fighting evil. Today is a lucky day. Klein had originally prepared for his wallet to bleed a little. At worst, he would find an excuse to leave before losing too much money. But he never expected that his luck today would be so good. Until just now, he had already won £3 and 4 sol. This was definitely a huge sum of money that was hard to refuse. He looked with some surprise at Leonard and Cohen Lee, who were repeatedly losing but continuing to fight. Your addiction to cards, since when did it get so big? They had lost so much money, yet they could still laugh. Well, Leonard and Cohen Lee glanced at each other, and in a tacit understanding, threw down their cards and threw up their hands. Not playing anymore, not playing anymore. Our luck is just no good today. Something's not right. Klein narrowed his eyes keenly. First there was Roseanne's uncharacteristic evasiveness, and then there were his two colleagues and friends intentionally or unintentionally losing large sums of money to him. His spiritual intuition didn't give any warning. In that case, Klein. Frey pushed open the door of the entertainment room with a cold expression, looking at Klein, who looked up upon hearing the sound, as if he had expected it. The captain is calling for you. Captain. Klein's expression turned solemn, worried that there was some urgent mission, and he quickly stood up. I'll head over right away. Knock, knock, knock. Come in. Klein walked into the office as instructed and saw Dunn Smith, the veteran Nighthawk, leisurely sipping coffee. He couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Captain, you called for me. Yes, that's right. Dunn casually set down his coffee and looked closely at Klein's features through the swirling steam. After a moment of dazing, he finally smiled. I forgot to mention, you have a special day off today. What? My rotation isn't until Monday, a special day off. Why? While Klein was still brainstorming, he heard the amiable and respectable captain playfully add another sentence. I'm sorry, but it seems you only have most of the day left to enjoy your holiday. Captain, I didn't see that you had such an abundant sense of humor before. Klein couldn't help but complain a bit in his mind, but he was still completely lost. Where did I get a holiday from? Don't you guys usually complain that I have a bad memory? Dunn couldn't help but laugh. Though I almost missed it too. Happy birthday, Klein. Birthday. Klein blinked, feeling his eyes get a bit warm and a little sore. He really hadn't thought of that. Thank you, Captain. He responded dryly, leaving the room under the other's encouraging gaze, prepared to enjoy the remainder of his special holiday. Little Klein, are you getting ready to go home? The voice of the smiling old man was quite recognizable, catching Klein's attention without any effort. Long time no see, Mr. Neil. Klein confirmed the visitor's appearance and couldn't help but widen his eyes. He ruthlessly abandoned the control ability of the clown, potion and walked a few steps to stand before old Neil. It really has been a long time. Weren't you resting at home? Cough, you must allow a gentleman of the right age to come out for some air. Old Neil blinked his dark red eyes mysteriously. And, I'm also burdened with an important mission. What mission? My security clearance. Klein only remembered halfway through that, having been employed for almost a year, he was already a backbone of the entire Blackthorn security company, and his security clearance shouldn't be lower than old Neil's. No, 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 Klein, how can a fine young man like you limit your gaze to tedious work? Why not try some coffee, learn about art, or... Old Neil pulled out an exquisite silver chain from his breast pocket like a magic trick. Enjoy your birthday gift. It was a silver watch chain with a quite elegant design. The Albert chain, which could never go wrong, was occasionally dotted with tiny pieces of obsidian. It looked very expensive, the kind of expensive with high-class taste, distinct from that of a nouveau riche. Mr. Neil, this. Klein was caught off guard by this unexpected birthday gift. This is too valuable. And, hey, telling me is useless, old Neil said with a smile. Young people are thin-skinned, they pooled their money to buy a gift and entrusted me to give it to you, honestly, Klein. You are lenient, friendly, and very capable. Having you in the team is indeed a good thing. Accepting with joy, is perhaps the best reward, I cannot separate the two. Leonard came walking by, chanting. Leonard walked away, lamenting. Klein wanted some peace and quiet. Since he had plenty of time to rest, Klein decided to carry out a celebration activity that wasn't very original, making a big meal. Benson had successfully passed the civil service exam at the beginning of the year and became a clerk for the Tingen City Railway Management Bureau. Melissa had classes today and wouldn't be home until dinner time. However, what comforted the two elder brothers was that as the family's financial situation gradually improved, their frugal sister could finally calmly accept the pocket money given by her brothers, and her lunch choices had expanded from the same as breakfast to small restaurants around the school. For Melissa, it really is a qualitative leap. Klein sighed as he picked up a fresh and tender beef short rib and nodded with satisfaction. Tonight's dinner was naturally sumptuous, due to the small privilege of the birthday boy. Tonight's dishes were all willfully biased toward Klein's preferences: sweet and savory tomato beef stew, pan-seared steak with thick black pepper sauce and a bit of fat, sizzling charcoal grilled lamb leg, and a cream cake wrapped in a thick layer of maternal love and care that Benson had specially ordered from Mrs. Saintland. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Benson and Melissa sang the Happy Birthday song somewhat awkwardly. As per the old rules, this was also one of Emperor Russell's original classic tracks. Looking on the bright side, at least he didn't use the Heidilau version to make things difficult for people. Klein thought, finding humor in his hardship, and obscurely curled his lip in the darkness. Time to make a wish. Melissa looked very excited after finishing the song, her cheeks even more rosy and lively under the candlelight. Klein, what wish do you want to make? Shish, just think it won't come true if you say it out loud. The usually pragmatic Benson was rarely paying attention to these minor details, his expectant gaze also fixed on Klein. A wish. Klein held a smile and folded his hands in front of the large circle of lit candles. I wish to go home soon. And I also wish for the people I love, and the people who love me, to be safe, healthy, prosperous, and happy. Tisk, seems a bit cliché. Anyway. Happy birthday. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.